You brought sound back into my world." Elena signed her trembling hands, barely able to form the words. Mia stared at her across the table in Bellissimo's VIP room, surrounded by people who had spent their entire lives pretending not to see this woman. And then she looked at Adrian Valenti, the man Chicago feared, and watched his jaw tighten as he read his mother's hands for the first time. He looked like he might shatter. If you've ever watched someone you love disappear inside their own silence, this story will find you. Subscribe to our channel. Follow this story all the way to the end and drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The rain came down hard on Michigan Avenue that Thursday night. It came in sheets, the kind that soaked through a wool coat in 30 seconds flat and turned the gutters into rivers by 8 o'clock. The kind of rain that made people hurry, made them lower their heads and pull their collars up and pretend the world outside their immediate circle simply did not exist. Nobody stood still in that rain. Nobody except the man getting out of the black car in front of Bellissimo restaurant. He moved the way men move when they have never once in their adult life needed to hurry for anyone. Deliberately. Like the weather itself understood that it should not inconvenience him. One of his men held an umbrella, and Adrian Valenti walked beneath it without acknowledging the gesture, because acknowledging it would have meant acknowledging the man holding it, and Adrian Valenti did not see most people. He looked through them. He looked past them. He looked at them only long enough to determine whether they were useful or dangerous, and everything else simply ceased to exist. He was 38 years old, and he had controlled Chicago's underground economy for 11 years. Not the flashy kind of control that made for good newspaper headlines. The quiet kind. The kind that meant restaurant owners paid a percentage every month without being asked twice. The kind that meant police detectives learned very quickly to look the other direction. The kind that meant rivals had a way of disappearing, not violently, but completely. Businesses shuttered assets, frozen reputations destroyed, through methods that left no fingerprints and no bodies. Adrian Valenti did not lose. He did not compromise. He did not ask for anything twice. The hostess at Bellissimo saw his car before she saw him, and she had already cleared the VIP room of its previous occupants by the time his foot touched the sidewalk. She did not know how she knew. She simply knew. Everyone who worked in that building knew. There was something in the air when Adrian Valenti was coming, something that made the kitchen staff go quiet, and the sommelier triple-check every bottle, and the other waitresses suddenly develop reasons to be anywhere other than the east wing of the dining room. Everyone except Mia Carter, but only because Mia Carter had not been warned yet. She had been working at Bellissimo for 6 weeks. 6 weeks was long enough to learn which tables tipped well and which customers liked to hear the specials recited with enthusiasm they did not feel. It was long enough to memorize the wine list and stop apologizing for the prices. It was not long enough to learn about Adrian Valenti's standing Thursday reservation, because nobody had told her, and nobody had thought to tell her, because it had never occurred to anyone that Mia Carter would need to know. She found out the same way most people find out about forces larger than themselves. Without warning. She was refilling a water glass near the kitchen entrance when she heard the room change. That was the only way to describe it. The noise did not decrease. If anything, there were more people talking than there had been a moment ago, but the quality of the noise shifted. It went from the warm, loose sound of people enjoying expensive food to something tighter, more careful. The laughter that had been rolling across the room a moment ago went quiet, not all at once, but in a wave table by table, like a wind moving through grass. Mia set down the water pitcher. She looked toward the entrance. She saw a man in a charcoal suit walking through the room like he owned it, because in every way that mattered in Chicago he did. 2 men flanked him, and 2 more came behind, and they all had the same quality of stillness that made them look less like human beings and more like weather systems, dangerous and inevitable. But Mia was not looking at Adrian Valenti. She was looking at the woman beside him. The woman was small. She could not have been more than 5'2", and she had the rounded posture of someone who had spent decades carrying weight on her shoulders that no one could see. Her hair was silver white and pinned back neatly, and she wore a dark blue dress that was clearly expensive and clearly chosen by someone other than herself. She moved carefully like someone navigating a world that did not make accommodations for her, which was exactly what she was doing. Her name was Elena Valenti. She was 72 years old. She had been deaf for 9 years. Mia watched her settle into the booth across from her son. Watched how Elena's eyes moved around the room with that particular quality of attention that Mia recognized instantly because she had seen it in her younger sister's eyes for 18 years. The eyes of someone for whom all the information in a room arrives visually. Someone for whom a conversation they cannot join is not background noise, it is silence. Complete, total pressing silence. Adrian was already talking to one of his men. Elena watched him. She reached out and touched his sleeve gently once. He glanced at her. Something in his face flickered. Not impatience exactly, but the expression of a man who has reached the edge of his capacity and knows it. He said something to her. Elena could not hear it. She watched his lips, and she got the general shape of the words but not the warmth behind them, if there was any warmth, and she turned back to the table. She folded her hands in her lap. She looked at the menu without reading it, and Mia from across the room recognized that gesture too, the deliberate act of making yourself small so that nobody has to notice you are hurting. "Why is no one covering that table?" The question came from Dario, the floor manager, who had appeared at Mia's elbow with the silent speed of a man who had worked in restaurants long enough to materialize wherever problems were occurring. He was a compact man in his 50s with a thick mustache and the permanent expression of someone waiting for a disaster to arrive. "I didn't know we had a late reservation," Mia said. "VIP. Standing Thursday. It is always the same." Dario lowered his voice until it was barely above the level of lip reading. "Do not look directly at the man. Do not ask about the business. Do not comment on anything. Take the order, deliver the food, refill the water, and do not engage beyond what is absolutely necessary." Mia looked at the table again. At Elena, who was now watching a couple at a nearby table, having a conversation with a kind of longing that Mia felt like a hand pressing against her chest. "What about the woman?" Mia asked. "What about her? Does she have any dietary preferences? Does she need anything specific? Is there—" "She is fine," Dario said. "She never orders for herself anyway. Mr. Valenti handles everything." "Can she hear?" Dario blinked. "Excuse me, the woman, the older woman. She's not responding to any sound in the room. She's reading lips. She's deaf, isn't she?" Dario looked at Mia for a long moment, the way people look at someone who has said something obvious that they themselves had never once thought to notice. He seemed briefly uncomfortable. "That is none of your concern," he said finally. "Just do your job." He moved away. Mia picked up her pad and walked to the table. The bodyguards tracked her approach before she was within 10 feet of the booth. She watched 2 of them make eye contact across the table, a wordless communication that meant she had been registered, assessed, and categorized as low risk because she was young and female, and carrying a waiter's pad, and because people who matched that description had never once in Adrian Valenti's experience presented a genuine threat. Adrian himself did not look up from the documents he was reviewing. "Good evening," Mia said. "My name is Mia. I'll be taking care of your table tonight." One of the associates spoke without looking at her. "We'll start with the Barolo 2015, 2 orders of the Vitello Tonnato, and the Branzino for the lady." Mia did not write anything down. She was looking at Elena. Elena was looking at her. And Mia did what she had been doing since she was 6 years old, and her sister came home from the hospital, and the doctor told their mother that the world of sound was not a world her daughter would ever fully enter. She raised her hands. Not to gesture, not to wave. She signed. Her fingers moved with the quick, natural fluency of someone for whom sign language was not a skill, but a second tongue. The message was simple. It was the first thing she had learned to sign 20 years ago, kneeling on a kitchen floor across from a 4-year-old girl who was discovering that she could not hear her own mother's voice. "Hello," I can hear you. The correct translation was, I can understand you. But when Mia had learned to sign, she had always thought the truer meaning was something closer to, you are not alone in this room. Elena's hands went still in her lap. Her eyes went wide. It was the expression of someone who has been speaking into a void for so long that they have begun to wonder whether their voice still exists, and then suddenly, without warning, the void answers back. Her lips parted. She did not speak. She had not lost her voice, only her hearing, but she communicated more comfortably in sign, and she knew that spoken words in a noisy restaurant were difficult to follow. Instead, her hands rose from her lap, tentatively like someone stepping onto ice they are not sure will hold. You know, sign language. A little, Mia signed back. Enough. That is more than enough. Elena signed, and her hands moved with a dignity and precision that told Mia she had been signing for years, that this language had become her primary one, the one in which she thought most clearly. Most people do not even try. The entire exchange lasted 14 seconds. Across the table, Adrian Valenti looked up from his documents. He did not say anything immediately. He was a man who had built his entire reputation on the ability to read a room in under 30 seconds to understand exactly what was happening, who had power in any given situation, and what that situation meant for him. It was a skill he had developed out of necessity in rooms where reading people wrong could cost you your life. He was reading Mia Carter now. She was 24, he would learn later. She stood 5'5" in her sensible work shoes, and she had the kind of face that was easy to underestimate, not because it lacked intelligence, but because it wore its intelligence quietly. Brown hair pulled back. No jewelry, except small gold studs in her ears. The kind of person who moved through the world trying to take up as little space as possible. She was signing with his mother, in his restaurant, in his VIP room, uninvited, unasked, without permission. And his mother was crying, not dramatically, not the way people cried in movies. Elena Valenti had not cried dramatically in the 15 years since his father died. She cried the way old women cry when they have long practice keeping their feelings inside very quietly, with only the brightness of her eyes and the single track of moisture down one cheek to indicate that anything was happening at all. Adrian put down his pen. What did she say? He asked. Mia looked at him. She had a direct gaze, he noticed. Not bold, not the calculated boldness of someone who wanted him to know they were unafraid. Simply direct, the way people are direct when they are too focused on something real to remember to be afraid. She said she's cold, Mia said, and that the branzino gives her headaches. She would prefer the pasta. A beat of silence. She never said anything, Adrian said. She signed it twice. Mia's voice was gentle, but she did not soften the fact. She signed it once when she sat down and once about 5 minutes ago when you were looking at your papers. Something moved across Adrian Valenti's face that his associates had never seen there before. It was gone in under a second, replaced by the usual controlled stillness. But Mia caught it because she was watching for it, the way she had spent 20 years watching for exactly that micro-expression in the people who loved her sister and could not reach her. It was not anger. It was the look of a man who has just discovered he has been failing someone for a very long time without knowing it. Change the order, he said quietly. Of course. Mia turned back to Elena. Her hands moved. What kind of pasta do you prefer? Elena laughed. Not a polite laugh. A real one startled out of her, the kind that takes a person off guard because they had stopped expecting to find anything worth laughing at. Anything without fish, she signed. I have been eating fish every Thursday for 3 years because my son believes I enjoy it. Mia did not translate that one exactly. She said she'd like the tagliatelle with the truffle sauce. Adrian looked at his mother for a long moment. Elena looked back at him. For the first time in a very long time, the silence between them was not empty. The dinner lasted 2.5 hours. Adrian did not return to his documents. This was noted by his associates. It was noted very carefully the way men in his organization noted everything that deviated from the established pattern, because deviations from the established pattern were how you survived. If Adrian Valenti was not reviewing documents, something had replaced the documents in his attention, and they needed to know what that something was. What it was Mia Carter. Not in the way they might have expected. Adrian was not a man who chased women. He had too much discipline for that, and besides, his position made the whole enterprise both too easy and too complicated to be worth pursuing. What held his attention was not Mia herself, but what she was doing. The way she moved between the kitchen and the table and somehow managed 3 times in those 2 hours to stop and speak with his mother for 60 seconds or 2 minutes. Brief exchanges, nothing theatrical. But each time she left the table, Elena was different, lighter. The hunched quality of her shoulders eased slightly. She stopped looking at the door. At one point, Mia signed something to Elena that made Elena hold up her hand and begin signing back rapidly with the specificity of someone who has been saving a particular story for a very long time. Mia listened with her eyes. That was the only way to describe it. She watched Elena's hands with her full attention, and when Elena finished, Mia smiled, and the smile was not professional, and it was not performed. It was real. Adrian watched this. He watched his mother look up at him after Mia left the 3rd time, and he recognized the expression on Elena's face, because he had not seen it in years, and had not realized until this moment how much he had missed it. It was the expression Elena wore when she was satisfied, when she felt for however briefly like herself. He had not put that expression on her face. A 24-year-old waitress had put it there in 2 hours. Something in his chest moved that he did not have the language for, and would not have admitted to, even if he had. Near the end of the meal, while Elena was in the restroom with one of the female staff members, Adrian called Mia to the table. She came without hesitation, which he noted. Most people hesitated. "How long have you known sign language?" he asked. "Since I was 6, she said. "Family. My sister. She lost her hearing when she was 4. He was quiet for a moment. What else did my mother say tonight? Mia considered this. He could see her deciding how much to give him, not calculating exactly, but thoughtful. She was not afraid of him. He had not determined yet what to do with that information. "She said she hasn't had a real conversation in 4 months, Mia said. She said the last person who signed with her was a woman at her church who moved away in the spring. 4 months. The number hit him differently than he expected. Not with the clean, sharp quality of information that could be acted upon, which was how he preferred his emotions. With something heavier. 4 months of silence for a woman who had raised him in a house full of voices, who used to sing while she cooked, and talk through every meal, and fill every car ride with commentary about the world outside the window. "She has a nurse," he said. The words came out slightly defensive. "Yes," Mia said. "She mentioned her. She said she's very kind, but she doesn't know any sign language." Adrian said nothing. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad," Mia said, and her voice was not accusing. "Just honest, the way people are honest when they see no reason not to be. I'm telling you because I think you want to know. I think that's why you asked." He looked at her. "You're unusually direct for someone in your position," he said. "I've been told that." "In your position," he repeated. "Working here, for a man like me." "I know who you are," she said simply. "But you're not why I'm in this room right now." Yeah. He found out the next morning that she had been reprimanded by the floor manager for spending too long at one table. He found out because he made a call. He made the call without fully examining why he made it. He told himself it was practical, he had a standing reservation, and an employee who understood sign language was useful. He told himself he was making an operational decision. He did not look too closely at the fact that the first call he made on a Friday morning before reviewing overnight reports before taking his regular call with his financial advisor was to Bellissimo Restaurant to ensure that a 24-year-old waitress was not reprimanded for being kind to his mother. The floor manager was told in terms that required no elaboration that Mia Carter's service on Thursday had been excellent. The reprimand was withdrawn. Elena brought it up the following week. She appeared at breakfast. Adrian's home had a formal dining room on the 3rd floor, and Elena had an apartment on the 2nd. And most mornings she ate alone because Adrian rose at 5 and ate before she was awake, and she set herself across from him with the particular purposefulness that told him she had something to say. She signed without preamble. "I want to go back to Bellissimo Thursday." "We go every Thursday," he said. She shook her head. "Not for the restaurant. For the girl." Adrian put down his coffee. "Mia," he said. "Yes." Elena's expression was unreadable in the specific way of someone who has had many years to develop an unreadable expression. "She sees me." He wanted to say that he saw her. He wanted to argue that point, but he was honest enough with himself privately in his own head to know that seeing someone and making them feel seen were not the same thing, and that his mother was not talking about the first one. "I've been talking to Walls for 4 months, Elena signed. She talked back. "I'll make sure she's working Thursday." "That is not what I mean." Elena's hands moved with a firmness he recognized. It was the same firmness she had used when he was 16 and coming home at 2 in the morning, and she wanted him to understand that she was not fooled. "I mean, she is kind, genuinely kind. Not because she was told to be, not because she wants something." "Everyone wants something," Adrian said. Elena looked at him. "That is what this life has taught you," she signed. "It broke my heart a little watching you learn it." He did not respond to that. He was not capable of responding to that over breakfast on a Friday morning, with 3 meetings before noon. "I'll make sure she's working Thursday," he said again. Elena looked at him for another moment. Then she nodded. But the expression on her face told him she understood exactly what he had done, which was change the subject, and that she had too much love for him to call him on it, and too much grief about it to let it go entirely. She rose from the table and signed one more thing on her way out. She taught herself sign language when she was 6. For her sister, she did not have to do that. Then she left. Adrian sat with his coffee and his overnight reports, and the particular quality of silence that fills a room when someone has just said something true that you cannot argue with. He had Mia investigated by Wednesday, not because he suspected her of anything, because this was how he operated. Information was how he stayed alive. Information about the people who entered his circle, however peripherally, was not optional. The report came back simple. Mia Catherine Carter. 24 years old, born in Evanston, Illinois. Mother deceased car accident. Mia was 17 at the time. Father out of the picture since she was 8. One sibling, a younger sister named Cora, 21, profoundly deaf since age 4. Currently enrolled at Gallaudet University in Washington on a partial scholarship. Mia had been working 2 jobs since she was 18 to supplement Cora's scholarship and living expenses. She had been at Bellissimo for 6 weeks, her 3rd restaurant job in 4 years. The previous 2 she had left when management changed, and she had been asked to take on additional responsibilities without additional pay. She had left both times without making a fuss. She had simply left. She lived in a studio apartment in Logan Square. She had $240 in her savings account. She spent Saturday mornings at the Chicago Deaf Community Center off North Pulaski, where she helped with a children's art program for deaf kids aged 5 to 12. She had been doing this for 3 years. No payment, no recognition. She had simply shown up one Saturday because she saw a flyer and she had not stopped showing up. Adrian read the report twice. He had in his career reviewed dossiers on men who controlled private armies, on politicians, on federal judges, on people whose lives, when examined closely, revealed the intricate machinery of self-interest running beneath every apparent act of generosity. Mia Carter's life, examined closely, revealed nothing he could charge interest against. She was simply what she appeared to be. He did not know what to do with that. Thursday came. Mia was working. She had not been told why she was specifically scheduled, though she understood from the change in the floor manager's behavior that something had shifted. She came in an hour early and refamiliarized herself with the menu and made sure she knew the week's specials, because she had not forgotten the previous Thursday, had thought about it more than she would have admitted, specifically about the expression on Elena Valenti's face when Mia's hands first moved in her direction. She had cried afterward in the staff bathroom before her shift ended. Not out of sadness exactly, out of recognition. The particular pain of seeing loneliness and knowing exactly what it feels like from the inside. When Adrian's cars arrived, Mia was stationed in the East Wing. Not a coincidence, she understood now. Elena entered the room and immediately found her. Their eyes met across the dining room, and Elena lifted one hand, a small wave, the way you wave at someone you have been looking forward to seeing, and Mia felt something warm and sharp in equal measure. She went to them. She said good evening to Adrian, who looked at her with the same appraising attention as before, and then she turned to Elena and signed. "You look well. Did you eat this week?" Elena laughed. "I ate fish every day until I remembered I could complain." "What did you do?" "I wrote it on a notepad. My nurse was horrified that she had been serving me fish for 6 months. 6 months my son had given her a list. She followed the list." Mia signed. "Did you tell him?" Elena glanced at Adrian. "I'm telling him now," she signed, and turned to face her son. Mia watched Adrian watch his mother's hands. He was trying to read them. She could see it, the effort of it, the way his eyes tracked the movement without understanding. "She says," Mia began. "Don't," Adrian said quietly. Mia went still. He was looking at his mother. Something in his jaw was set with effort. Can you do it slower?" he said to Elena. Elena blinked. Then she signed again, slowly, deliberately, like someone speaking a language to a person who has only just begun to learn it. And Adrian Valenti watched his mother's hands and tried for the first time in 9 years to understand what she was saying. He got 2 words, fish and list. He got them, and he looked up at Mia with the expression of a man who has just passed a test he did not know he was taking. "She didn't like the fish," he said. "No," Mia confirmed. "The list I gave the nurse." "Yes." He was quiet. He looked at his mother. Elena was watching him with that same unreadable expression, the one that held years of things inside it. "I'm going to need someone to teach me," he said. He said it to Elena, but Elena nodded toward Mia. "I'm not a teacher," Mia said in the kitchen 10 minutes later, where she had gone to put in the order, and where Dario immediately appeared at her elbow to inform her with significant distress that Mr. Valenti had requested she return to the table at her earliest opportunity. "I know," she said. "I'll be right there." He requested. I know what he requested. She finished writing the order and handed it to the line. "I'll be right there." She went back. She stood in front of the most feared man in Chicago, who was looking at her with an expression she had not expected to see there. Not commanding, not demanding. Something quieter than either of those. "I would like to learn sign language," Adrian Valenti said. "There are programs," Mia said carefully. "Good ones. The community center off Pulaski has evening classes on. I want to learn so that I can speak with my mother," he said. "I want someone who already speaks with my mother to teach me." "I'm a waitress," Mia said, "not an ASL instructor." "I understand that. I don't do private lessons." "I'm not asking for a lesson. I'm asking for conversations." He paused. "I watch you with her. You don't teach her things. You just talk to her. I want to learn how to do that. I want someone who can help me learn what she's saying when she signs to me." The table was quiet. Elena was watching both of them. Her expression had not changed, which meant she had already decided how this should go and was waiting for them to catch up to her. "I work Thursday nights," Mia said finally. "I know." "And you're here Thursday nights?" "Yes." She looked at him. He met her eyes without flinching, without the performance of patience that people usually put on when they were waiting for an answer they expected to get. He looked like someone who was possibly for the first time in recent memory, genuinely uncertain. "Okay," Mia said. She said it to Elena as much as to him. Elena's expression shifted. Just slightly, but enough. Bahid. That first night after the dinner plates were cleared and the restaurant had thinned out to its last few tables, Adrian asked Mia to show him one thing. Not a word. Not a phrase. One thing. "How do you say I'm here?" he asked. Mia showed him. He tried it. His hands large and scarred along the knuckles from years of fights he would not name moved with the concentrated stiffness of someone learning to write in a new alphabet. It was wrong. The angle was off, and the movement came from his shoulders instead of his wrists, and it looked nothing like the fluid thing Mia's hands had done. Elena watched. She did not correct him. She signed something to Mia. Mia looked at it and looked at Adrian. "She says..." Mia began and stopped. She looked at Elena once more. "She says she's been waiting 9 years to see your hands try." Adrian was very still. He looked at his mother. Elena looked back at him. She reached across the table and put her hand over his large, scarred, clumsy hand, and held it for a moment the way she had held it when he was 8 years old and afraid of things he could not name. He did not pull away. He did not say anything. There was nothing to say. Some silences are not empty. Some silences are the fullest thing in the room. And in the east wing of Bellissimo Restaurant, on a rainy Thursday night in Chicago, surrounded by the last echoes of other people's dinners and the distant sound of rain against glass, the most feared man in the city held his mother's hand and felt the 9 years of distance between them begin just barely to move. He did not sleep well that Thursday night. Adrian Valenti had not had trouble sleeping in 11 years. Sleep was not something he struggled with. He had trained himself the same way he had trained every other function of his body and mind to shut down when he needed to and start back up when required. Sleep was maintenance. It was practical. It was not something he lay awake thinking about. But he lay awake that Thursday night thinking about his mother's hands. He thought about the way she had signed to Mia Carter across a restaurant table with the fluency and urgency of someone who had been storing words up for months. He thought about the way Mia's hands had answered back without hesitation, without the awkward pause of someone translating, but with the naturalness of a person speaking their own language. He thought about Elena's face during those exchanges, the way it opened, the way something that had been clenched tightly behind her eyes for a long time loosened slightly every time those hands moved. He thought about what Elena had signed at breakfast that week. "I've been talking to Walls for 4 months." 4 months. He had run his organization for 11 years without a significant mistake. He had anticipated threats before they materialized. He had protected his people, his assets, his interests with a precision that other men in his position spent their entire careers trying to approximate. And he had not noticed that his mother had been sitting in silence for 4 months. Not because he didn't care. That was the part he could not reconcile. He cared about Elena the way he cared about breathing. It was not something he examined. It was simply fundamental. He would dismantle anyone who tried to harm her. He had done exactly that twice in the early years, when people had tried to use her to get to him. But caring about someone and being present for them were, he was beginning to understand, not the same thing. He got out of bed at 3 in the morning and went to his study and looked up ASL on his phone. He watched 3 videos. His hands were useless at it. He tried a few movements in the dark of his study and felt immediately ridiculous, which was not a feeling he was accustomed to, but he kept watching. He watched until 5 when it was time to get up anyway. He did not tell anyone he had done this. By Monday, he had made 2 decisions. The first was that Elena needed someone who could communicate with her every day, not once a week at dinner. He called the nurse agency and requested a replacement, someone with ASL certification. He did not explain his reasoning to anyone. He simply requested it. The second decision was harder to define because it was less a decision and more an acknowledgement. He was going to see Mia Carter again before Thursday. He told himself this was because he needed a progress report on Elena. He told himself it was practical. He was good at telling himself things were practical. He sent a car for her Monday afternoon. She was at the community center when the driver found her. This was the first thing that surprised him. Not that she was there, he had known from the report that she went on Saturdays, but that she was also there on Monday afternoons, which had not been in the report, because the report had covered a single week of her movements, and apparently Mia Carter's presence at the center extended well beyond what could be captured in a week. The driver called Adrian. "She's teaching a class," he said. "Dozen kids. She said she'll be done in 40 minutes. "Tell her there's no rush," Adrian said. This surprised the driver enough that he repeated it back. "No rush, sir. 40 minutes is fine." He could hear the driver's uncertainty through the phone. Adrian Valenti did not tell people there was no rush. Adrian Valenti's schedule ran on a precision that made the people around him occasionally compare him to a machine usually not within his hearing. "Yes, sir," the driver said. She arrived at his building 53 minutes later. She was wearing a light jacket, and her hair was down, which was the first time he had seen it down, and she had a canvas bag over one shoulder that appeared to contain, among other things, a child's drawing rolled up and held with a rubber band. She looked around his office the way people look around rooms that are larger than they expected, and then she looked at him, and her expression was the same as it had been at the restaurant direct, unhurried, unimpressed. "You sent a car," she said. "I wanted to discuss something," he said. "Sit down." She sat. "My mother's nurse has been replaced," he said. "The new one has ASL certification. She started this morning." Something in Mia's face shifted. She had not expected this. How did Elena react? She cried. He said it without inflection. "My new housekeeper, who also does not know sign language, but apparently has a gift for emotional intelligence, told me Elena sat with the new nurse for an hour and signed everything she has been thinking about since January." "That's good," Mia said. "That's really good." "I know." He paused. "I wanted you to know I understood what you were telling me. I don't always respond quickly to things that are not operational, but I heard you." Mia looked at him. "You could have called the restaurant to tell me that," she said. "I could have." "But you sent a car instead." He did not answer that. He moved on, the way he moved past anything he didn't want to examine directly. "I also want to continue what we started Thursday, you showing me signs. I want to be able to speak with her directly, without a translator. I told you I'm not a teacher. And I told you I'm not asking for a teacher. I'm asking for practice." He looked at her levelly. "I watched videos this weekend. My hands are wrong. Everything I try comes out wrong." "You watched videos. 4 hours of them." She stared at him. He stared back. "You have been trying to learn sign language since Friday," she said slowly. "On your own for 4 hours because I have been failing to communicate with my mother for 9 years, and I have only just understood that this is a problem I have the capacity to solve." He said it flatly without asking for her sympathy. Just the facts of the situation. "I would like your help solving it." Mia was quiet for a moment. Then she set her canvas bag on the floor, sat forward in the chair, and raised her hands. "This is where most people go wrong," she said. ASL is not English translated into hand movements. It's its own language. It has its own grammar. You're going to have to stop thinking in English and start thinking in pictures. "How do I do that?" "You look at what the person is signing, and you feel what they mean before you try to name it." He looked at her hands. "Like this," she said, and she signed something simple. Not the formal signs she had shown him Thursday, but something smaller, more natural, the kind of sign that had its own rhythm. "What does that look like to you?" "Not what word." "What does it look like?" He studied it. "Someone opening a door," he said. "It means welcome," she said. "But you got the feeling right. That's where you start." They worked for 2 hours. He was as he had suspected, and she confirmed without mercy, not a natural. His hands did not move the way hers did. She told him this was partly because he had not been doing it since childhood, and partly because he held tension in his shoulders and arms that transferred into his wrists and made his movements rigid. She told him to shake out his hands between attempts which he did and which felt undignified and which he did anyway. By the end of the first hour, he could sign his mother's name. Not perfectly, but recognizably. By the end of the second hour, he could sign, "Are you hungry? Are you cold? Are you tired?" 3 questions. Simple ones. The kind a person asks when they want to make sure the people they love are all right. Which was the kind of person he was underneath everything, and which he had been expressing for 9 years, through nursing arrangements and dietary lists and security teams, none of which it turned out communicated. "Are you all right with anything like the accuracy of actually asking?" "That's enough for today," Mia said when she saw his concentration beginning to fray. She had a sensitivity to the moment when a person had absorbed everything they could absorb, and was now just making the same mistakes, more tired. "You don't build it in a day. My mother has already lost 9 years of—" "That's not how this works," she said, and her voice was firm but not unkind. "You can't guilt yourself into fluency. The guilt will make you tense, and the tension will make you sloppy, and your mother deserves better than sloppy. Go slowly." He looked at her. "You say things directly," he said. "I was told that was a problem." "By who?" "By several managers." She paused. "And 2 previous boyfriends." "They were wrong," he said. She glanced at him quickly, startled by the certainty of it. "Most people," he continued, "say what they believe will produce the least friction. It produces nothing. The directness is better." She looked at him for a moment longer than she had intended to. Then she picked up her canvas bag and stood. "Same time Thursday. At the restaurant. Or here," she said, "if you want more time to practice before you see her." He said nothing for 3 seconds. Then, "Wednesday, 6 o'clock." She nodded. She left. He sat in his office for a while after she was gone and did not look at his overnight reports. He looked at his hands instead, large, scarred, rigid, trained for 20 years in all the wrong languages. He shook them out the way she had shown him. He tried the sign for welcome. It was still wrong, but it was closer. Wednesday came, and Thursday, and the Thursday after that. The weeks developed a structure that nobody in Adrian's organization commented on directly, but which they all registered with the particular heightened attention of people whose job it was to notice changes in the pattern. The floor manager at Bellissimo stopped pretending he didn't know who Mia Carter was. The drivers stopped being surprised when they were sent to the community center or her apartment in Logan Square. The 2 men who stood outside Adrian's office door during working hours stopped raising their eyebrows when they heard through the closed door the sound of a voice teaching someone a language made of hands. Elena noticed fastest and said least. She appeared at dinner every Thursday with the same composed expression, and she signed with Mia for the first 30 minutes the way she always had, freely, rapidly, with the pleasure of someone who has been given back something they lost. And then she began to include Adrian in the conversation. Slowly at first. Simple things. "Adrian, tell me if you want more bread." And Adrian would try, and Elena would wait, and sometimes she would understand him, and sometimes she would look at Mia with an expression that asked for help, and Mia would gently show him the correct movement, and Elena would look back at her son. She never laughed at him. This meant more to him than he would have been able to explain. He had not expected her to laugh at him. Elena was not a cruel person, but he had expected some impatience, some expression of the years of accumulated frustration at being misunderstood. Instead, she received every attempt he made with a kind of focused gratitude, as though each clumsy sign was a word she had been waiting to hear. One Thursday, 3 weeks in, he successfully asked her, "Did you sleep well?" Elena stopped. She looked at his hands. She looked at his face. She signed back, "You practiced." "Every day," he said aloud, because he had not yet gotten the confidence to sign an answer to a question only to ask them. "Say it," she signed. "Don't speak it." He looked at her. He looked at his hands. He signed every day. 2 words. Clumsy. Wrong angle on the second one. Elena put both hands flat on the table. She pressed her lips together very tightly, and then she reached across and held his face in both her hands the way she had not done since he was small, and he sat very still inside that gesture because it had been a long time, and because he had not realized how much he had missed it. Mia looked away. She looked at the table. She looked at the wine list. She examined the pattern on the tablecloth with great attention, because she did not want to be in this moment with them in any way that made it belong to her. It was theirs. It had always been theirs. She only looked up when Elena released him. Elena signed something that was not directed at Mia. That was directed at the air between her and her son, and Mia translated it without being asked quietly the way you carry something fragile. She says, Mia said she thought the silence was going to be forever. Adrian did not respond immediately. He signed one word back to his mother. It was not a word Mia had taught him. He had learned it from the videos. He had practiced it alone in his office at 3 a.m, which she did not know. It was not a complex sign, but he had worked on the angle and the movement until it felt like something he meant, not something he was performing. The sign for never. Elena read it off his hands. She understood. She turned away from both of them and looked at the wall for a long moment, and when she turned back, she was composed again, but her eyes were very bright. It was Dario who came to Mia first. He found her in the back room on a Thursday an hour before service when she was changing into her work shoes. He closed the door behind him, which he had never done before, and she looked up and knew from his expression that whatever he was going to say had been rehearsed. I want to tell you something, he said. Not as your manager. As someone who has worked in this restaurant for 18 years. Okay, she said. What you are doing? He stopped. He tried again. The situation with Mr. Valenti and his mother. I have been watching it develop for 3 weeks. It's not a situation, she said. I'm not criticizing it. He held up a hand. I want to tell you to be careful. Mr. Valenti, as I have known him a long time, I have seen what happens to people who enter his life, not because he is cruel to them, but because his world is. It is not a safe world, and when people become important to him, they become part of that world, whether they want to be or not. Mia looked at him. I'm a waitress, she said. You were a waitress, Dario said quietly. I'm not sure what you are now. She did not have an answer for that. He left. She sat with her work shoes in her hands and thought about it for a while. She thought about the way Adrian looked at her sometimes across the table when she was signing with Elena, not with the assessment she had felt in those first few weeks, but with something quieter. Attentive. The way someone looks when they are studying something they want to understand. She had been telling herself it was about Elena. It was about Elena. It was also she was increasingly aware about something else. She put on her shoes. She went out to work. The shift was ordinary until 9 o'clock. At 9, one of Adrian's men came to her at the service station with an expression she had not seen on any of Adrian's people before. Something close to discomfort. Mr. Valenti would like a word, he said. She went to the table. Adrian was alone. Elena had gone home at 8. She tired easily in the evenings, and the associates who usually occupied the table's edges had been moved to a different section of the room. Adrian sat with a glass of wine he had not touched, and a phone face down on the table. He looked up when she arrived. Sit down, he said. I'm working, she said. I know. Sit down. She sat. I need to tell you something, he said, and the quality of his voice was different. Not cold, not commanding. Something careful in it the way people sound when they are moving toward a subject they have been avoiding. I had you investigated. Mia went still. 3 weeks ago, before the second Thursday, I had my people put together a report on you. She looked at him. What kind of report? She said. It wasn't quite a question. Background, history, where you live, where you work, what you do. He looked at her steadily. Your sister, your mother, your finances. The silence between them was a different quality than the silences they had built up over Thursday evenings. This one had edges. Why are you telling me this? She said. Because you're going to find out eventually, he said. People talk in my world, and I would rather you hear it from me. You investigated me without telling me. Yes. Yes, I know it is not. I'm not asking for your approval, he said quietly. It's what I do. It's how I protect the people around me and the people it's what I do. I'm telling you because you deserve to know. She looked at him for a long time. What did you find? She said finally. That you are exactly who you appear to be. He said it with a directness that matched her own, and she recognized it for what it was, a kind of respect, the offering of the truth without decoration, which is not something I encounter very often. And what did you do with that information? I made sure your rent was not going up in February, he said. Your building's owner was planning to raise it. He changed his mind. Mia stared at him. I also redirected a grant to the community center, your program, the children's art program. He looked at his untouched wine. They had lost their city funding in November. They were going to have to close the program in January. The grant came through in December, she said slowly. The director thought it was from a foundation. It was from a foundation, he said. I fund several. She sat across from him in the near-empty VIP room of Bellissimo restaurant and felt the ground shift under her in a way that was not entirely unwelcome and was not entirely comfortable. You can't do that, she said. I already did. I mean, you can't just... I don't want to be something you manage. I'm not a situation you can... I know, he said. I help your mother because she deserves to be helped, not because I want anything from you. I know that, he said. I told you. You are exactly who you appear to be. That is exactly why I'm not managing you. He stopped. He was not a man who stopped in the middle of sentences. I was trying to take care of something, badly, without asking. Because I don't know how to do it any other way yet. The word yet landed quietly between them. She noticed it. She thought he might have noticed her noticing it. You have to ask, she said. I know. If you want to do something for the center, you ask. You don't just reach into my life and rearrange things. You're right. I mean it. I know you mean it. He looked at her. I'm sorry. It was the most unguarded thing she had heard him say. She absorbed it. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. She stood up. She smoothed her apron. She picked up her pad from the table where she had set it. The program starts again in January, she said, at the edge of the table, not looking at him. The kids missed 6 weeks. They'll be behind on the project they were doing. What project? They were making a mural for the center's main room. Tile mosaic. She paused. They needed about 400 more tiles to finish it. The supply order got canceled when the funding fell through. Adrian said nothing. I'm telling you, she said, because you asked how to do it correctly. That's how. You ask what's needed, and then you ask if you can help. She walked back to her station. She did not look back. She did not need to. The tiles arrived at the center on Friday. Not 400. 1,200 in a range of colors she had not specified, including 3 colors she would not have thought to order, but that turned out to be exactly right for the corner of the mural that the kids had been arguing about for weeks. There was no card, no name. There was a delivery note that said simply, "For the mural." The director called her bewildered and grateful. Mia stood in her apartment and looked at the delivery note on her phone screen for a long time. Then she did something she had not done in an adult context with any man. She sat down at her kitchen table and wrote him a letter. Not a text message. A letter on actual paper, because she had a feeling that whatever this was, it deserved actual paper. She wrote, "The tiles came. They're perfect. Thank you for asking. even if it was after the fact. She paused. She wrote, "Elena said something to me last Thursday that I didn't translate for you. She said that watching you try to learn to sign is the first time in 9 years she has felt like your mother instead of your responsibility. I thought you should know." She paused again. She wrote, "You're getting better, by the way. Your left hand is still too stiff. Stop gripping." She folded the letter. She was not sure how to get it to him, and then she remembered that she had his driver's number for coordinating Wednesday sessions. She sent it with the driver on Saturday morning. He read it in his office. He read it 3 times. He set it on his desk and looked at it. He had received letters in his career, significant ones, legal documents, contracts, correspondence that represented the transfer of considerable power and money. He had treated all of them with the calm efficiency of someone who understood that paper was just paper, that what mattered was what you did with the information on it. He read this letter 3 times. He opened his desk drawer and put it inside. He closed the drawer. Then he opened it again and read it a 4th time. The part about Elena. The first time in 9 years she has felt like your mother instead of your responsibility. He sat with that. He sat with it for a while. He had a meeting in 20 minutes. An important one. A meeting that would determine the direction of a significant reorganization of his northern operations. He sat there for another 5 minutes anyway, and he thought about his mother, and he thought about 9 years, and he thought about a 24-year-old woman who had sat at his table and written him an actual letter on actual paper and told him to stop gripping. He went to the meeting. But something had changed in the set of his face. His associate Piero, who had known him for 14 years, noticed it, immediately noted it to himself, and said nothing. What he noted was this. Adrian Valenti looked like a man who had just remembered something he had not known he had forgotten. Wednesday the following week she arrived at 6 and found that the room where they usually worked had been rearranged. The desk had been moved to the side. 2 chairs faced each other in the center of the room, and on the small table between them there was a book. She picked it up. It was an ASL dictionary. The comprehensive one, over 1,000 signs organized by category with photographs and descriptions. There was a bookmark in it. She opened to the page. The bookmark was a piece of paper, and on the paper in handwriting that was careful and slightly cramped the way handwriting looks when someone has not done much of it recently, he had written page 347. Family. I've been studying this section. Test me. She looked up. He was standing by the window. Test you, she said. All of them, he said. Every sign on that page. That's 43 signs. I know. She looked at the page. She looked at him. Sit down, she said. He sat. She raised her hands. She signed the first one. He answered. He was right. She signed the second. He answered. He was right again. By the 15th sign, she had stopped being surprised. By the 30th, she had started smiling. He got 39 out of 43. The 4 he missed were all in the same subcategory. Connection, she said. You missed all the signs in the connection subcategory. I know, he said. I couldn't get the hand position right. Show me again. She showed him. He tried. He was still wrong. Let me... She reached forward and adjusted his right hand. The way you adjust someone's hand when they are holding a pen incorrectly. Practical. Direct. She moved his fingers into the correct position and held them there for a moment while she checked the angle. He went very still. Not tense. Just still. She let go. Try now, she said. He tried. It was right. He looked at her. She looked at her hands. Good, she said. Do it again. He did it again. She made herself focus on the sign and not on the quality of the silence in the room. Again, she said. He did it again. Perfect. That one means belonging, she said. It's in the connection section because belonging is a kind of connection. It's one of the harder ones to get right because it's subtle. Most people either push too hard or not enough. "What's the right amount?" he asked. She looked at him. She knew they were not only talking about hand signs. "Enough to mean it," she said. "Not so much that you're forcing it." He nodded slowly. "Elena wants to have dinner on Sunday," he said, then changing register in the way he sometimes did, direct without transition. "Not at the restaurant, at the house. She asked me to ask you." He paused. "She said to tell you she is making pasta." "Elena doesn't cook," Mia said. "No," he said. "But she signed at the new nurse for 20 minutes yesterday until the nurse agreed to help her make it. Apparently Elena remembers the recipe. She just hasn't had anyone worth making it for." Mia felt something pull in her chest. "Sunday," she said. 1 o'clock. "Okay," she said. She gathered the ASL dictionary and her bag. At the door she paused. 43, she said. "For the record, you should practice the whole page again, including the ones you got right. Why? Because getting it right once doesn't mean you own it." She looked at him. "Practice it until it's in your hands, not your head." He looked at her. "I will," he said. She left. In the elevator going down, she put her back against the wall and looked at the ceiling and let herself feel for 30 seconds all the things she had been carefully not feeling for the past 3 weeks. Then the doors opened. She walked out into the November air. She thought about Sunday. She thought about a woman who had not cooked for anyone in years, standing in a kitchen instructing a nurse through sign language on how to make the pasta recipe she had carried inside her since before her son was born. She thought about what it meant to make something for someone, to say with flour and eggs and the specific warmth of a kitchen on a cold day, "You are worth the effort. You are worth everything I still have to give." The city moved around her. She walked. And somewhere above the Chicago skyline, in a room with a carefully rearranged desk and 2 chairs facing each other, and an ASL dictionary with a bookmark on page 347. Adrian Valenti sat alone and practiced the signs for belonging and connection and family until they stopped living in his head and started living in his hands. Sunday came in cold and gray, the way November in Chicago always came, as though the city had made a deliberate decision to strip every comfort out of the air and see what was left standing. Mia took the bus. She had not asked for a car, and Adrian had not offered one, and she preferred it that way. She needed the 40 minutes on the bus to settle herself, to sit with the particular unease she had been carrying since Wednesday, since the elevator, since the 30 seconds she had allowed herself to feel things she had been carefully not feeling. The bus was ordinary. The bus was full of ordinary people going to ordinary places, and she was an ordinary person who happened to be going to have Sunday lunch with a Mafia boss and his mother in a house that was, she suspected, not ordinary in any respect. She was right about the house. She had known he was wealthy. The restaurant, the suits, the cars, the office, she had assembled a picture of what his life looked like from the outside, and the picture was expensive. But there is a difference between knowing something and standing in front of it, and when the car he had sent without being asked, she noted this, filed it away, said nothing, pulled up to a brownstone on the north side that occupied 3 building widths and had the quiet confidence of architecture that does not need to announce itself. She felt the difference in her chest. The door was opened by a woman in her 50s who introduced herself as Rosa, who had been running the Valenti household for 22 years, and whose expression when she looked at Mia was a complicated and immediate one that Mia did not have time to fully decode before she was inside. Elena was in the kitchen. She heard her before she saw her, or rather she heard the nurse, whose name was Clara, speaking in a slightly elevated voice as she confirmed quantities and temperatures, and she heard the sound of a kitchen being used the way kitchens are used when someone who loves cooking has finally remembered that they love cooking. The particular rhythm of it, purposeful and alive. Elena was standing at the counter with her sleeves rolled to the elbows. She turned when she felt the change in the air that comes with someone entering a room. Her face did what it had done the first Thursday evening at Bellissimo it opened. fully, without reservation, without the self-protective layering that 9 years of invisibility had built over it. She signed before Mia was fully through the door. "You came." "Of course I came." Mia signed back. "You said there was pasta." Elena laughed, a real laugh, the kind that came from the belly, the kind that had been happening more often in the past several weeks. She turned back to the counter and held up her hands, her flour-covered hands with the pride of someone who has been working all morning on something that matters. "I made the dough," she signed. "Clara rolled it because my wrists. But I made the dough. It smells incredible," Mia signed. "It's my mother's recipe," Elena said. "I haven't made it since 2019. She said it simply. But Mia understood what lived inside that simple statement. The year Elena's hearing had gone, the year everything reorganized itself into a new and lonelier shape. Why 2019 Mia signed, though she already understood. Elena looked at her hands. Flour and all. Because cooking for yourself is just eating. You need someone to cook for. Adrian was not in the kitchen. He appeared at 12:45 from what Rosa referred to as the study, and he was in a dark sweater and dark trousers, rather than a suit, which was the first time Mia had seen him without a jacket, and there was something slightly disorienting about it. Not because it changed who he was, but because it revealed something underneath the armor. He looked less like Chicago's most feared man. He looked like a man who worked very hard at being that, and who had for a Sunday afternoon put the work down. He came into the kitchen. He looked at his mother's flour-covered arms. He signed, "You made the dough." Elena looked at him. She looked at his hands, his clumsy improving hands, and she read what he had signed, and her expression did something complicated and private that lasted only a second before she composed it back. She signed, "Don't look so surprised." He signed back, "I'm not surprised." Then he looked at Mia. "Was that right?" "Close," Mia said. "The second sign, you dropped your elbow." But she understood. "She understood," he repeated. "That's what matters right now." He held her gaze for a moment. Then he looked back at his mother and tried it again, elbow where it belonged. Elena watched his hands. She nodded once. Better, she signed. He turned away before either of them could see his expression, but Mia saw it anyway. Lunch lasted 2 hours. They ate at a table in a room that was clearly used for family, not business, smaller than the formal dining room, Rosa pointed out, as they passed, with a window and chairs that had been sat in enough times to hold the shape of the people who used them. Elena sat at the head without discussion, because it was her house in every way that mattered, and Adrian sat to her left, and Mia sat across from him, and for the first 40 minutes, the conversation flowed through Mia as translator the way it always had. And then Elena did something deliberate. She put her hands in her lap. She looked at Adrian. She waited. He understood. He looked at Mia, a quick look, not asking for rescue, asking for confidence, and she gave him a small nod, and he turned back to his mother. He signed, "Is the pasta good?" It was a small question. Simple. The kind of question that takes 30 seconds to form in a language you are still learning. But it was his hands, his words, his attempt, no one between them. Elena looked at his hands. She looked at her son's face. She signed, "Ask me something harder." And he sat there for a moment, just a moment, and thought. And then he signed slowly, with the concentration of someone carrying something carefully across uneven ground. "Are you happy here? In this house?" The table went quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet. The quiet of a question that deserves to land before it gets an answer. Elena looked at her hands. She looked at the room. She signed, and Mia kept her eyes on Elena's hands and translated softly, not interrupting, just carrying. She says the house is very large. She says she used to fill it with noise, and now she walks through it, and it is full of her own silence. She says, Mia paused. Elena's hands had stopped. She started again. She says she has been very lonely, but that she says it is getting less lonely. Adrian said nothing. He did not need to say anything. He reached across the table and put his hand over his mother's hand, and he signed the word he had learned alone in his office at 3 in the morning, the one he had practiced until it was in his hands and not his head. Never, never alone, never again. Elena turned her hand over under his and held it. Mia looked at the pasta on her plate. She thought about her sister. She thought about how the loneliness of silence was specific and physical, how it existed in your body and not just your mind, how it made you smaller over time, the way a voice kept quiet for too long eventually starts to believe it was never meant to be heard. She thought about how it ended every single time, not with a grand gesture, not with a dramatic revelation, but with someone turning to you and simply trying. She pressed her fork against a piece of tagliatelle. She did not let herself cry. She almost did. After lunch, Elena went to lie down. She tired in the afternoons, and she made no apology for it, which was a relatively recent development. Clara had told Mia privately that Elena had spent her first months in the house, apologizing for everything, for the inconvenience of her needs, for the difficulty of communicating, as though her presence required ongoing justification. She did not apologize for the nap. She signed at Mia on her way out of the room. Don't let him make you have coffee in the formal room. He does that with everyone, and it is terrible. Mia relayed this. Adrian looked toward where his mother had gone, and the edge of his mouth moved in a way she was beginning to recognize as the closest he came to smiling without intending to. The sitting room, he said. Smaller. She's right about the formal room. They had coffee in the smaller room. For a while they were quiet in the way that people are quiet when they have spent several hours talking and have reached a natural rest. Not awkward, just easy. The kind of easy that Mia noticed and felt slightly suspicious of, because easy was not something that had ever arrived this fast for her with anyone, and she had learned to be careful of things that arrived faster than she expected. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yes." "Why did you tell me about the investigation yourself?" She had been sitting with this question for 2 weeks. "You didn't have to. I would never have known." He turned his coffee cup in his hands. "My father told me something when I was 17, he said. He said the most dangerous thing a man in our position can do is believe his own version of himself. He said the people who last are the people who are honest about what they've done, even when no one is forcing them to be. Your father was in the same business." "Yes." "And he gave you advice about honesty." "He was an honest man," Adrian said. "Within a dishonest world, it's possible to be both. Most people are both." She thought about that. "He died when you were, what, 27? He looked at her. "The report," she said. "Yes." He paused. "He died when I was 26. I took over at 27, after a year. She did not ask about the year. She could tell the year was not something he was offering. "Was Elena close to him?" she asked instead. "They were married for 40 years, he said. They were—" He stopped. He started again differently. "They signed together. He learned when she lost her hearing. Within 6 months he was fluent. He used to say it was the easiest thing he had ever done, because it was for her." Mia went still. Something had just rearranged itself. "He was fluent," she said carefully. "Yes." "And when he died?" "She lost her language," Adrian said. "It was flat, the way things are flat, when someone has looked at them for a long time and absorbed all the feeling available, and what is left is just the fact. Her interpreter, the one person in this world who spoke her language, gone, and I—" He set down the cup. "I thought grief would pass. I thought she would adapt. I was managing my own grief and the business and the security situation, and I thought, you thought she would be okay. I thought she was okay." He looked at her. "There is a difference. I wanted her to be okay, so I saw okay. I didn't see what was actually there." Mia thought about her mother. About the year after the accident, the year she had been 17, and managing the grief and Cora's needs and the bills and the school, and she had looked at Cora one morning and seen that her little sister was not okay, and had not been okay for months, and she had been so busy surviving that she had missed it completely. "That happens," she said. "It happens to the people who love each other most sometimes, because you're too close. You see what you can bear to see." He looked at her. "You're doing it again," he said. "What?" "Saying the direct thing, the true thing, without softening it." "Do you want me to soften it?" "No," he said. "I've had enough soft things said to me that meant nothing." He held her gaze. "I want the true thing." The room was quiet. Outside the window, the city moved at its Sunday pace, slower and more forgiving than the weekday version of itself. "Your father would be glad," Mia said, "that you're learning. That's the true thing." Adrian was silent for a moment. Then quietly, "I think so too." She did not see the trouble coming. In retrospect, she would understand that this was because the trouble had not yet arrived when she left the brownstone that Sunday afternoon, had not yet materialized into the specific threat it would become. It existed at that point only as a shift in the landscape, a reorganization happening in the outer structures of Adrian's world that his people were tracking, but had not yet assessed as critical. She would understand all of this later. What she understood that Sunday, walking to the bus stop with her coat pulled around her against the November air, was something smaller and more immediate. She understood that she had just spent an afternoon in a house that felt, in spite of everything she knew about it, unexpectedly like a home. And she understood that this feeling was both true and complicated, and that she was going to have to live with that complication for a while before she knew what to do with it. Wednesday came. She arrived at Adrian's building at 6 and found him on the phone, which was unusual. He was always off the phone before she arrived, and the quality of his voice was the Adrian on business voice, the one that had no warmth in it and no uncertainty, the one that she had heard described in whispers at Bellissimo, and had now heard occasionally in passing when she was at the building early and a call ran long. She sat in the chair in the center of the room and waited. He finished the call. He set the phone face down on the desk with a precision that suggested controlled force. "Something happened," she said. "It's being handled." "Okay." She opened the ASL dictionary. "Do you want to work or do you need to go handle it?" He looked at her. "I want to work," he said. She looked at him for a moment. He meant it. Whatever was happening outside this room, he genuinely wanted an hour in here where it was not happening. And she understood that, recognized it as the kind of thing people need a room where the problem doesn't follow you in. "All right," she said. "Last week you had trouble with the emotional states. Let's go through them again." He sat down. She began. They worked for 50 minutes. His focus was sharper than usual. She thought the discipline of someone channeling agitation into precision. He got things right on the first try that he'd needed 3 attempts on the previous week. He was pushing himself harder. "Stop," she said at the 45-minute mark. He stopped. "Your right hand is shaking," she said. He looked at his hand. He made a fist, released it. "I'm fine," he said. "I didn't say you weren't fine. I said your hand is shaking." She looked at him. "What happened tonight?" He was quiet. "You don't have to tell me," she said. "But it's in your hands. Whatever it is, I can see it." He looked at his hands. He said, "There is a man named Greco. He controls the South Side operation, not mine. Rival. He has been making moves for 3 months. Tonight one of my businesses received a message." "What kind of message?" "The kind that doesn't require words." She understood what that meant. "Is Elena safe?" He looked at her. The directness of the question. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What does that mean for you?" But the first thing, the right thing, registered on his face. "Yes," he said. "She is always the first thing I secure. Her floor of the house has—" He stopped. "She is safe." "Okay," Mia said. She signed, "Are you scared?" She signed it directly at him, not as a lesson, not as practice. A question. He watched her hands. He signed back imperfectly, but clearly, no. She held his gaze. She signed, "Try again." He sat very still. He signed, "Yes." Not dramatically, not as an admission wrung out of him. Quietly, the way real things are said, because the sign for yes when you mean it looks different from the sign for yes when you don't. Mia lowered her hands. "That," she said, "what you just did, that took more courage than anything else you've shown me." He looked at the floor. "Don't," he said. "Don't what? Make it something significant. It was just a word." "It was not just a word," she said. "You know that." He said nothing. She let it stand. 2 days later, on a Friday morning, Elena disappeared. Not vanished, not taken. She simply was not in the house when Rosa went to bring her morning tea at 8 o'clock. And she was not in any of the rooms Rosa checked, and she was not in the garden. And Clara arrived at 8:15 to find Rosa already calling the security team, and the security team already calling Adrian, who was in a meeting he had left mid-sentence before the second sentence of the call was finished. The organization moved with the precise speed of a machine that had been built for exactly this kind of emergency. Every exit from the property was reviewed. Every car that had come and gone. Every security feed. Every contact she might have had. The nurse. Rosa. The driver who sometimes took her to church. The women from the church group who called twice a month. Nothing. She was simply gone. Adrian did not panic. He did not pace. He did not shout. He stood in the security room in his house and looked at the feeds and the data and the team around him with the cold, efficient clarity of a man who has trained every emotional response into usefulness, and he began to systematically dismantle every assumption about what had happened in order to find the one that was true. His first assumption, Greco, the timing, 2 days after a threat. It had the logic of an escalation, the pattern of someone wanting to make a point. He made 3 calls in under 6 minutes. By the end of the third call, he had a team moving south. It was his associate Piero who called Mia. Not on Adrian's instruction. Adrian had not thought of it, which was not a criticism. It was simply that Adrian's mind in crisis moved in operational tracks, and Mia Carter was not yet an operational variable. Piero called her because Piero had been watching what happened at the dinner tables for 7 weeks, and he was under everything a practical man. Mia answered on the second ring. "Elena is missing," Piero said. Mia was already putting on her coat. She did not go to the house. She went to the garden. She had heard about the garden once Elena had signed about it at Bellissimo in one of their longer conversations, the kind that happened at the end of an evening when Adrian was dealing with business and Elena was free to simply talk. She had described a garden in the back of the house, a walled garden, the kind that people kept in the city as a private pocket of something quieter. She had described a bench at the far end under a tree that had been there since before the house was built. She had described sitting there with her husband in the summer. She had described it with the specificity of someone describing the place in the world where they felt most like themselves. Mia told the driver to take her around the side of the building. She climbed out before he had fully stopped. She went through the gate. She found Elena on the bench, sitting, coat on, hands in her lap, looking at the tree, which had lost all its leaves and stood bare against the winter sky, with the quiet patience of things that know they will come back. Mia sat beside her. She did not say anything for a moment. Elena did not look at her. Then Mia signed. "How long have you been here?" Elena signed. "Since 6. It's 9:30. I know, you scared everyone." Elena turned to look at her. Her expression was not apologetic. "I needed them to look for me," she signed. Mia sat with that. She signed, "Because you wanted to know if they would." Elena looked back at the tree. "I wanted to know if Adrian would look for me because he loves me," she signed, "or because losing me would be a problem to solve." The words landed with precision. Mia thought about what Adrian had said on the phone that night. The 3 calls in 6 minutes. The team moving south. He assumed you were taken. Mia signed. He was ready to. He moved his entire operation. Elena's hands were still. "Not because he loves me," she signed. Because someone threatened what is his. Elena. I know my son, she signed. The speed and certainty of it. I raised him. I watched him become this. I watched him build all the walls, and I understood each one because I knew what he was protecting. But knowing why a wall exists does not make it less of a wall. Mia thought about the Wednesday night, and the shaking hand, and the sign for yes that had taken everything he had. He is afraid of losing you. Mia signed. He told me. Elena turned to her. He told you. He signed it to me. I asked him if he was afraid, and he said yes. Elena was very still. He signed it 2 weeks ago. Elena looked at her hands. She looked at the tree. She looked at the winter sky and the bare branches, and the specific quality of light that comes in November on a cold day when the sun is trying its best against the cold. He has not told me she signed. No, Mia agreed, but he is trying to learn the language to say it. The garden was quiet around them. I needed to know if he would come. Elena signed again, but differently this time. Not accusing, just explaining. The way old women explain things when they have been sitting with them alone for a long time and they need someone else to hold the weight of it for a moment. I needed to know if I still existed to him enough to cause a crisis. Mia signed. You do. And then the gate opened. He came through the gate the way he had come through the restaurant the first evening, with the same deliberateness, the same contained force. Except that the force was different now, because it was not the force of a man who controls a room, but the force of a man who has been running inside his own chest for 3.5 hours, and has just found what he was running toward. He stopped when he saw her. Elena on the bench. Coat and bare tree and winter light. He was across the garden in 8 steps. He crouched down in front of her the way a person does when they need to be at eye level when standing above feels wrong, and he looked at her face and she looked at his. And in that moment Mia stood up quietly and stepped 2 paces back because this was not hers. She watched him sign. His hands were shaking. Not the controlled shake of someone managing adrenaline. Shaking the way hands shake when all the discipline has been used up in the getting here, and there is nothing left to smooth the emotion out of the movement. He signed. You scared me. Elena looked at his hands. She signed. Good. His jaw tightened. She signed. Do you know what I felt this morning? When I woke up and the house was still and Clara was asleep and Rosa was not up yet, and I sat in my room and looked at the ceiling and understood that if I disappeared, truly disappeared, the thing you would feel first is not grief, not fear for me, but the problem, the management of the problem. He stayed very still. Elena signed, I am your mother, not your property, not your responsibility, not a variable in your operation. His hands moved. He signed, I know. She looked at him. Do you? She signed. Because the way you love me is... She paused. Her hands held the shape of a word and then released it. Started again. The way you love me looks like management. It looks like security teams and dietary lists and certified nurses. It looks like everything except... She stopped. He signed. Except what? She looked at her son's face for a long moment. She looked at the shaking hands. And then she signed. Except this. She meant this. Right now. The crouching down. The shaking. The garden. The fact that he had come through the gate without his people, that he had left them outside, that he was here alone, without the armor of the organization and the team and the carefully managed image, just a man in front of his mother. His eyes were wet. He did not look away. He signed very slowly with the care of someone who knows. This is the most important thing they have ever tried to say in an imperfect language. They are still learning. I don't know how to love you the right way. I am still learning, but I am here. I came here because I was. He stopped. He tried again. I came here because you are the only person I have never been able to be cold about. Everything else I can be cold about. Not you. Never you. Elena's hands went to her mouth, the way hands do when a person is trying to hold something in that needs to come out. She reached forward and held his face. He let her. He put his hand over hers, and he held it there, and he stayed very still inside it, the way he had stayed very still in the restaurant the first time. The way you stay still when something is so fragile, you are afraid breathing wrong will break it. Mia stood at the edge of the garden. She had her back partly turned. She was looking at the wall, at the old brick of it, at the specific texture of something that has been standing a long time and has seen everything and continued standing anyway. She heard Elena make a sound. Not words, just sound. The particular sound that comes from the throat when a person who has been holding something for years finally puts it down. And then she heard, behind her, very quietly, the low and private sound of Adrian Valenti crying. She did not turn around. She did not move. She stood at the edge of the garden, and she let them have it completely, because some moments belong entirely to the people inside them, and the greatest kindness you can offer is simply to stand at the perimeter and make sure nothing intrudes. They stayed in the garden for 20 minutes. Mia did not count. She estimated later from the way the light changed. When Elena was ready to go inside, she stood and turned to Mia and signed. "You knew I was here." I guessed. How Mia signed. "You told me about this tree once. The way you described it, I could tell it was the place you went when you needed to feel like yourself." Elena looked at her. She reached out and touched Mia's face once briefly with one flower-free hand. Then she went inside. Adrian and Mia stood in the garden. He had composed himself. Not completely, there were still signs of it in the slight redness around his eyes, in the way he was standing slightly less armored than usual, but composed. "Thank you," he said. "You would have found her," Mia said. "Not in time." He looked at the gate. "I was moving south. I had people looking at Greco's operations. You were protecting her the way you know how. It wasn't the right way." "No," she said, "but you're learning." He looked at her, and then something happened that had not happened before in any of their Wednesdays or Thursdays or Sunday lunches. He reached out and touched her arm briefly just above the elbow, a quick and light contact that lasted maybe 2 seconds. "Come inside," he said. "Rosa will make coffee." She followed him. At the gate she paused. She looked back at the bare tree at the end of the garden. She thought about what Elena had said. I needed to know if he would come. She thought about how he had come through that gate. The 8 steps, the crouching down. She thought some people love you the wrong way for years before they learn the right way. And the question is never whether they can learn. The question is whether they are willing to. She went inside. So, by the time they reached the sitting room, Adrian's phone had vibrated 11 times. He ignored it. This was Mia had come to understand not indifference. It was the opposite of indifference. It was a man choosing consciously, and at some cost, to be in this room and not in the other one. Rosa brought coffee without being asked. She set it between them and looked at Adrian with the expression of a woman who had worked for a family for 22 years and understood what had just happened without having been told and said, "She's resting. Clara is with her." "Good," Adrian said. Rosa left. The phone vibrated again. He picked it up. He looked at the screen. Something changed in his face. Not dramatically, but Mia had been watching his face for 2 months now, and she had gotten good at the small changes. "I need to take this," he said. "Of course." He looked at her. "Wait." She waited. He stepped out. She could not hear the conversation. She did not try to. She sat with her coffee, and she thought about Elena in the garden and the things she had signed. And she thought about the shaking hands, and the word never, and the word yes, and all the other words that had passed between the 4 walls of this strange November education they had been building together. He came back in 7 minutes. He sat down. His face was the professional face, the one that felt its emotions through a wall of glass, managed, controlled, allocated. "Greco's people sent a second message tonight," he said, "while I was looking for my mother." "What kind of message?" He looked at her. "The kind that tells me he knows where I spend my Wednesday evenings," Adrian said. The room went cold. Mia understood exactly what he meant. She understood it in her chest before she understood it in her mind. He was not just telling her about a business threat. He was telling her that the Wednesday evenings her had been noted, had been observed, had been considered as a potential variable in someone else's calculation of how to hurt Adrian Valenti. "Oh," she said. "Yes," he said. They looked at each other. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," he said carefully, "that I have to make some decisions about how to manage this, and that some of those decisions may affect—" He stopped. "It means I should have considered this possibility sooner. I didn't, because I wasn't thinking of you as another stop, because I was thinking about the Wednesday evenings differently than I should have been." "How were you thinking about them?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. He looked at his hands. "As something that belonged to a different part of my life," he said finally. "A part that didn't overlap with the other part." "But they overlap now." "Yes." She was quiet. "I'm not afraid," she said. "I know you're not," he said. "That is exactly what concerns me." She looked at him. His eyes were steady on hers. Not commanding, not managing. Asking, she realized. In the way people ask when they don't have the words and they need the other person to see past the surface of what they are saying to the thing underneath. She saw it. She had always been good at that. She picked up her coffee cup. She set it down. She said, "What do you need me to do?" He was quiet for a long moment, and then for the second time that day, Adrian Valenti said the truest thing he had in him. "I need you to let me protect you," he said. "Without fighting me on it, just this once." She looked at him. "That," she said, "depends entirely on what protecting me looks like." And for the first time since the garden, something in his face moved toward that near smile, the one she had come to read as the realest expression he had. "Reasonable," he said. "I thought so," she said. Outside, the city moved through its late afternoon. Inside the sitting room, with Rosa's coffee cooling between them and the phone finally quiet, and Elena resting upstairs, and the bare tree standing in the garden behind the house, two people who had come at each other sideways through a language made of hands, sat with the new knowledge of what they were to each other. Neither of them named it. They did not need to. Some things are understood before they are said. Protecting Mia Carter. It turned out looked like a car outside her building on Logan Square at 6 every morning and 11 every night, a rotating two-man team that she was not supposed to notice and noticed immediately, and which she said nothing about for exactly 4 days before she called Adrian directly. "The two men outside my building," she said. "Good morning," he said. "The one in the gray coat has been eating sunflower seeds since 6:15. The shells are on the sidewalk. My neighbor almost slipped." A pause. "I'll tell him to use a bag," Adrian said. "Adrian." "Mia. We agreed you would ask." "I asked if you would let me protect you. You said it depended on what it looked like. I'm showing you what it looks like." She was quiet for a moment. "Two men," she said. "Two. Not 4. Not 4. And they stay outside. They don't follow me into the community center. They wait at the door. That is going to terrify the children. They'll wear different coats." She made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but was in the same neighborhood. "Fine," she said. "Fine," he said. She hung up. He looked at the phone for a second. He called Piero. "Different coats," he said. "Both of them, starting today." Piero, who had seen everything in 14 years, said, "Yes, sir," without any inflection at all, which was its own kind of commentary. The Greco situation moved faster than Adrian had anticipated. This was not because he had miscalculated Greco's capabilities. It was because someone inside his own organization had been feeding information outward. Not major intelligence, not anything structural, but the kind of detail that told an outside party exactly how much they could push before the response came. The kind of information that made a man like Greco believe the window was wider than it was. Adrian found out on a Tuesday. He spent Wednesday handling it with the quiet, systematic efficiency that had kept him operational for 11 years, and by Thursday morning, the source of the leak had been identified, removed from the organization, and replaced. No violence. That was not how Adrian preferred to work. Violence was loud, and it drew attention, and it created paperwork in the form of rivals who wanted to avenge it. What Adrian preferred was the kind of resolution that left the other party with nothing to build a narrative around. He handled it. What he did not handle as well was Mia finding out. She found out not from him, but from an article in a local business paper, the kind of publication that reported on legitimate business interests without looking too hard at the less legitimate ones, and which ran a piece on Thursday about the restructuring of several commercial properties on the South Side following a significant shift in the ownership arrangements of 3 holding companies. She read it on her phone on the bus. She called him. "The South Side properties," she said. "Good morning." "Don't do that," she said. "The article about the South Side properties. That's Greco." A pause. "In part," he said. "It's done. The immediate issue is resolved." "When?" "Wednesday. You were dealing with this Wednesday and you didn't tell me. I didn't want to worry you. Adrian." Her voice was even. Not angry. The voice of a woman who has had this conversation before in different forms with different people and knows exactly where it leads. "What did we talk about in the sitting room?" "I remember what we talked about." "Apparently not, because what we talked about was that protecting me looks one way and managing me looks another way, and I don't accept the second one. I kept it from you because I was handling it and I didn't want. You kept it from me because you decided for me what I needed to know," she said. "That's managing. That's the list you gave the nurse about the fish." The silence on the line was significant. "That's a fair point," he said finally. "I know it is. It won't happen again. I'd like to believe that." "Mia." "I do believe it," she said. "I'm just telling you for the record." He was quiet for a moment. "Are you still coming Sunday?" he said. "Elena is making her mother's pasta again. She has been planning the menu since Monday." "Then yes," she said. "I'm still coming Sunday." She hung up. He sat at his desk and thought about the fish list and the nurse and the 9 years, and the fundamental pattern of a person who loves through management, because management is the only language he has ever trusted. And he thought about what it meant to learn a new language. Not just ASL, the other one, the harder one, the one that required you to be present instead of prepared, to be with someone instead of ahead of them. He was still learning. He made a note of it. The Sunday lunches had become a weekly fixture by December. Nobody announced this. It simply became true the way most true things become true gradually without ceremony, through the accumulation of small decisions that no single one of them was large enough to question. Mia arrived at 1 o'clock. Rosa had coffee ready. Elena appeared from her room with whatever she had been planning all week, and the 3 of them sat at the family table, and the conversation moved through Mia less and less as Adrian's signing improved. It was improving fast now, faster than she had expected for a man who had started with no foundation. She thought it was because he practiced the way he did everything with a kind of total commitment that left no room for half measures. Clara had mentioned carefully that she sometimes heard him in his study late at night going through signs alone. Rosa had mentioned that he had started signing simple things to Elena at breakfast before Mia arrived, small exchanges asking if she wanted tea, whether she had slept. The staff had noticed. People notice when the center of gravity in a house shifts. What they were seeing was a man who had for 11 years run his household with the same remove he ran his organization, and who was now doing something different. Not dramatically different, but different enough that Rosa, who had been with the family for 22 years and loved Elena with the fierceness of a woman who has watched someone she cares about disappear into silence and felt powerless to stop it, had cried in the kitchen one Sunday morning and told Clara it was the onions. It was not the onions. The specific moment Rosa had seen was this: Adrian had come downstairs at 7:30 and found Elena already in the kitchen, and instead of nodding and pouring his coffee and going to his study, he had sat down at the kitchen counter across from her and signed, "What are you making today?" And Elena had turned from the stove and signed back at length with the animation of someone who had been waiting to have this particular conversation, and Adrian had watched her hands and gotten most of it and asked her to repeat the parts he missed, and she had repeated them without impatience, and the whole exchange had lasted 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Rosa had dried her eyes with the dish towel and gone to make the coffee, and thought about all the Sundays and Mondays and Tuesdays and all the other mornings of the 4 years since Elena's husband died, when Elena had stood at that stove alone, and not a single person in the house had thought to ask her what she was making. 3 weeks after the Greco situation resolved, Adrian called Mia on a Thursday afternoon. She was at the community center. The mosaic was back on track. The tiles had arrived, all 1,200 of them, and the children had been working on it for 2 weeks, with the focused intensity of people returning to something they had been afraid they had lost. She was standing in front of it when her phone rang. "The nurse," Adrian said. "Clara." "Is Elena all right?" "Elena is fine. Clara gave notice this morning." Mia turned away from the mural. "Why?" "She's been offered a position at a hospital. Better pay, better hours." He paused. She handled it well, but she was very quiet this afternoon. She went to her room at 2 and hasn't come out." Mia understood immediately. Not because she was told. Because she knew what Clara had meant to Elena in the months since she arrived, the daily conversations, the fluency, the ordinary human contact of someone who could talk with her in her own language. Losing that was not a minor administrative inconvenience. It was losing a voice. "I'll come," she said. "You don't have to—" "I'll come," she said again. "An hour." She told the program coordinator she needed to leave and was out the door in 4 minutes. She arrived at the house to find Adrian at the bottom of the stairs with the expression of a man who has knocked on a door twice and is trying to decide what comes after twice. "She won't come out," Mia said. "She came out once, signed that she was tired, went back in." "Did you ask if she wanted to talk?" "I asked if she was all right." Mia looked at him. "That's not the same question," she said. She went upstairs. She knocked on Elena's door once and signed against it the knock and sign, which was what she and Elena had developed for exactly this situation. A knock followed immediately by a sign pressed against the wood, so that if Elena had her hand on the door, she could feel the intention behind it or see it through the gap at the bottom if she was lying down. The sign was, "It's me. Can I come in?" The door opened. Elena was in the armchair by the window, and she had the specific look of someone who has been crying in private for 2 hours and has arrived at the dry stage where the emotion is still present, but the tears are finished. She was wearing her dark blue cardigan, the one she wore when she was not performing for anyone. Mia sat on the edge of the bed. She signed, "Tell me." Elena signed, "I keep losing my interpreters." It was simple. It was devastating. First my husband, she signed. Then the woman from church. Then Clara. "You still have me." Mia signed. "You are not mine to keep." Elena signed. And the simplicity of it, the lack of self-pity in it, the plain and accurate truth of it, hit Mia hard. You are a young woman. You have your own life, your sister, your work. I am grateful for every Thursday and every Sunday, but I cannot. She stopped. I am 72 years old, and I am so tired of learning to live without people. Mia sat with that. She did not rush past it. She let it exist in the room, which was what Elena needed. Not a solution, not a reassurance that rushed in to cover the feeling, but the feeling itself acknowledged, held, not minimized. Then she signed. What if we found someone permanent? Clara was supposed to be permanent. Someone from the community, Mia signed. Someone for whom this is not a job, they leave for a better one. Someone who signs because it is their language, not their certification. Elena looked at her. What do you mean? There is a woman Mia signed at the center. She is 43. She has been deaf since birth. She used to work in elder care. She retired when her mother got sick. Her mother died last spring. She comes to the center on Saturdays to help with the children because she has nothing else to do on Saturdays. Elena was very still. She signs? Mia continued the way you and I sign. Like it is thinking, not like it is translation. Does she know about me? No, Mia signed. I am asking your permission before I say anything to anyone. Elena looked at the window. She looked back at Mia. How did you know about her? She signed. Because I pay attention. Mia signed. To who is lonely and who has something left to give. It is a thing I have been doing since I was 6. Elena's hands went to her face. Not dramatically. The way hands go to faces when something touches a place that has been untouched for a long time. Then she lowered them. Yes, she signed. Ask her. Mia went back downstairs. Adrian was in the sitting room. He stood up when she came in, and the question was on his face before she said a word. She's okay, Mia said. She's sad. She's allowed to be sad. Clara. I know. It's not about Clara specifically. It's about what Clara represented. The conversation. The continuity. She sat down. I have a suggestion if you're open to it. Tell me. She told him about the woman from the center. She told him everything she had told Elena. The background, the experience the Saturday mornings, the quality of her signing. He listened without interrupting, which was a thing she had noticed about him. When he was listening to something that mattered, he was completely quiet. No filler sounds, no half responses while he formulated his own. Just listening. She would need to be compensated properly, he said when she finished. Better than properly. She doesn't need money, Mia said. She has money. She needs purpose. Everyone needs money. Adrian. Mia. She needs to feel that she is contributing something real. Not that she is being employed as a companion for someone's elderly mother. She needs to feel like a peer. He looked at her. How do you do that? He said. You treat her like one. Mia paused. You eat dinner with them when she's here. You include her in the conversation. You make it feel like a household, not a care arrangement. He was quiet. That's yes, he said. I can do that. And you ask her, Mia said. You don't arrange it and present it as done. You ask your mother's permission, and you ask the woman from the center if she is interested, and you let both of them decide. He looked at her steadily. I know, he said. I'm saying it anyway. I know. The near smile. You always say it anyway. Because you always need to hear it. Probably, he said. The woman's name was Diane. Diane Kowalski, 43, deaf from birth, former elder care coordinator, current volunteer at the Chicago Deaf Community Center on North Pulaski. She had a dry humor and an extensive vocabulary in ASL that encompassed several regional dialects and a significant amount of slang that Elena had not encountered in years and found immediately delightful. Mia brought them together on a Saturday at the center. She did not stage it. She did not arrange an introduction. She simply made sure she was there with Elena when Diane arrived for her usual Saturday shift, and she let the two women find each other the way people with a shared language find each other in a room full of people who don't speak it. It took approximately 4 minutes. She watched Diane sign something she was too far away to catch, and Elena throw her head back in the kind of laugh that Mia had seen more of in the past 3 months than she suspected Elena had produced in the previous 3 years. She watched Elena sign something back, and Diane's face open with the particular expression of someone who has just recognized a kindred spirit. She did not introduce herself. She went to help with the mural. On the bus home, Elena signed. She knows 16 ways to say the food is terrible. Was that what you were laughing at? She signed them all in a row. For practice. Then she asked if I wanted to get coffee, and I said yes. Elena paused. She looked at her hands. She talks the way your husband used to talk, she signed. Then she looked up. Or the way I imagine he talked. I can't remember anymore if I'm remembering correctly, or if I'm remembering what I want to remember. Mia signed. How does she talk? Like she has something to say. Elena signed. Like she expects you to be interested. Mia looked at her. That's how people talk, she signed, when they've never had to apologize for taking up space. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then I used to talk that way. I know, Mia signed. You're starting to again. Adrian heard about the coffee from Rosa, who heard it from the driver who had taken them, and he heard it on a Sunday morning while he was reviewing the week's schedule. He read the message from Rosa, and he sat with it for a moment, and then he did something he did not do often. He closed the schedule. He went downstairs to the kitchen. Elena was at the counter. He sat across from her. She looked up. He signed, "Tell me about Diane." Elena set down what she was doing. She looked at her son. She signed, "She is rude and funny, and she told me my cardigan was tragic." He signed back, "Which one?" "The blue one." "She's right." Elena stared at him. He signed imperfectly but clearly. "I have thought that for 10 years. I was afraid to say it." Elena laughed. She laughed until she had to put her hand on the counter to steady herself, and Adrian watched his mother laugh and felt something in his chest do the thing it did. Now, the thing it had started doing approximately 6 weeks ago, this specific quality of expansion, like a room that has had its windows opened for the first time. "She is good," Elena signed when she had recovered. "She does not feel sorry for me. Does she know what the arrangement might be? She knows I have a house and a son, and that I am alone more than I should be." Elena paused. She said she had the same problem. She said her apartment is very quiet since her mother died. "I would like to meet her." Adrian signed. Elena looked at his hands. She signed, "Your signing is better. I practice." "I know." She held his eyes. "I know you practice. Clara told me before she left. She said she could hear you in the study at night." He said nothing. "Your father was the same," Elena signed. "He learned in 6 months. He said it was the easiest thing. I told him it was the hardest language I had ever tried to teach anyone, and he said..." She stopped. She smiled at something Mia would never see, a private thing, a memory. He said easy and worth it are the same word when it is for the right person. Adrian was very still. "Was he right?" She signed. He signed, "Yes." She looked at him. She looked at his hands. Then she signed something that she had not signed since he was small, since the years before the business and the walls and the distances and the long erosion of everything soft between them. She signed it the way she had signed it every night when he was 8 and 9 and 10, standing in the doorway of his room with the light behind her. "I love you. I am proud of you. Sleep well." He sat at the kitchen counter at 8:30 in the morning and felt it go through him the way things go through you when they are true and old and yours. When they belong to a part of you that has been locked up for so long, you had almost stopped believing it was still there. He signed back. He had practiced this one. "I love you. I am sorry it took me so long." "Good morning." Elena pressed her lips together. She nodded once. She turned back to the counter. He poured himself coffee, and the kitchen was full of the ordinary sounds of a Sunday morning, and it was the best sound he had heard in years. The offer to Mia came on a Thursday, 6 weeks after the Greco situation resolved. He made it at the dinner table after Elena had gone home, and the room had thinned to its end-of-evening quiet. He had been thinking about it for 3 weeks, and had decided, because he had learned something in the past months about how to do things, to ask. "I want to offer you something," he said. She set down her water glass. "I want to fund the community center's programming for 5 years," he said. "Full operating budget. The art program, the children's classes, the interpreter training program they've been trying to launch, all of it. I've had my people put together the numbers." She looked at him. "And I want to offer you a position," he continued. "Not at the restaurant, a legitimate one, coordinating the foundation. I'm setting up deaf community support interpreter education family communication programs. It would be full-time. It would pay 3 times what you make at Bellissimo." He put a folder on the table. She did not open it. "And in exchange," she said. "Nothing," he said. She looked at him. "No strings," he said. "No arrangement. No obligation to me or to Elena or to any of this. The foundation will be its own entity. You would answer to a board, not to me." "You're serious," she said. "I'm always serious." "Why?" He looked at her steadily. "Because what you do is worth doing. Because the center is underfunded, and it shouldn't be. Because interpreter education in this city is inadequate, and it shouldn't be. And because," he paused, "because you told me that you don't want to be rewarded for treating your mother like a human being. And this is not a reward for that. This is a separate thing. This is me acknowledging that you are good at something that matters and offering you the resources to do it properly." Mia looked at the folder. She looked at the table. She said, "When I was 18 after my mother died, I had Cora and 2 jobs and a lease I couldn't quite cover, and a social worker offered me a support package, government assistance housing subsidy, a childcare credit. It was real help, good help, and I turned it down." He waited. "Because I was stupid," she said. "Because I thought needing help meant I had failed at something. Because nobody had ever offered me something without wanting something back, and I didn't know how to take the help without waiting for the cost." She looked at him. "It took me 2 years to go back and apply. Those 2 years were the hardest of my life. Because I was so busy proving I didn't need anything that I almost lost Cora's school placement." "I'm not offering charity," he said. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm telling you the story, because I'm not going to make the same mistake twice." She opened the folder. She read it. She read it carefully, the way she read everything with her full attention, with the quiet focus of someone who has learned that details matter, because details are where the cost always hides. She turned to the last page. She looked up. "The board?" she said. "You're not on it." "No." "But you fund it." "Yes. And if I am running the foundation and we disagree about the direction, then the board mediates, not me." She closed the folder. "I need a week," she said. "Take it." She picked up her water glass. She put it down. "Adrian." "Yes." "Why is your name not on the board?" He held her gaze. "Because it shouldn't be," he said. "Because you said you don't want to be something I manage. Because the foundation should belong to the work and the people the work serves." He paused. "And because I have enough to manage." "But you'll fund it." "Yes." "Because you want to." "Yes." She looked at him. "Okay," she said. "Okay, you'll think about it." "Okay, I'll take the week." She stood. At the edge of the table she stopped. "The children finished the mural," she said. "At the center, the tile mosaic." "When?" "Tuesday." She reached into her bag and took out her phone. She held it up. The photo on the screen was the mural 6 feet wide, dense with color, the organized chaos of 24 children's ideas brought into something whole and permanent. He looked at it. "The corner," she said. "The section they were arguing about for weeks. The extra tiles solved it." He looked at the corner. It was a pair of hands, signing. He looked at the hands in the mural for a long moment. "What does it say?" he said. "It says family," she said. She put the phone away. She said goodnight. She left. He sat at the empty table in the VIP room of Bellissimo restaurant, in the room where his mother had first pressed her hands flat on a white tablecloth and tried to be invisible, and he looked at the space where Mia had been sitting. He picked up the folder. He looked at the last page. The board she had noticed his name was not on. He looked at the 4th name on the list. It said, "Position reserved pending discussion with Monsieur Carter." He had left it because he did not know who she would want there, and he had thought if she accepted, she should choose. He thought about the mural, the pair of hands, family. He set the folder down. Yeg. The week she had asked for lasted 5 days. She called him on Saturday morning. "The position on the board," she said. "The one you left blank." "Yes." "I want it to be Diane." He was quiet. "Elena's Diane. She ran a non-profit in elder deaf care for 6 years before she went into the care work directly. She knows the landscape. She knows the community. She knows what's missing. Mia paused. And she would be extraordinary at it. Have you asked her? I'm asking you first. Because she is your mother's, because she is in your household's life now, and it would affect that. He registered this. She had thought about the connections. She had thought about what it would mean for Elena, for Diane, for the balance of the household she was becoming part of. Yes, he said. If Diane agrees, yes. Then yes, Mia said. Yes to the position. Yes to the position. Yes to the foundation. Yes to the board. A pause. I have conditions. I would be concerned if you didn't. My salary goes through the board's payroll, not through anything connected to you directly. Agreed. I retain final say on programming decisions. The board structure already. I know what the board structure says. I'm saying it out loud, so we both hear it. Agreed, he said. And I keep the Thursday shifts at Bellissimo. He was quiet. That pays a fraction of what... I know what it pays, she said. I'm keeping it. Why? A pause. Because it's where I met Elena, she said. Because it's mine. Because I don't want the foundation to be the only thing I have in my life, and I don't want everything in my life to be connected to you. The last sentence landed with precision. He heard it clearly. Understood, he said. Okay, she said. Mia. Yes. Thank you, he said. For all of it, not just the foundation, for... He stopped. He tried again. I am better at this than I was 3 months ago. At this... Another stop. The right word was not coming in English, which was interesting because the right word came immediately in the language she had taught him. He signed it alone in his office for himself, because he could not sign it through a phone, and because he needed to say it somehow. Listening. I'm better at listening than I was. She was quiet for a moment. I know, she said. Elena told me. What did she tell you? She said you signed to her at breakfast on Tuesday, and she understood everything you said. He said nothing. She said it was the first time in 9 years she understood everything, Mia said. Without asking you to repeat, without guessing at the parts that were wrong. He looked at his hands. She also said, Mia continued, and her voice was different now, quieter, that you signed something to her that you had never said before, not even in words. She wouldn't tell me what it was. She just said she had been waiting a very long time to hear it. He was quiet. What did you sign? Mia said. He thought about the kitchen on Sunday morning, the blue cardigan, the laugh, the thing Elena had signed in his doorway when he was 10 years old, and what he had signed back finally decades late in the only language that felt like the truth. I told her I was proud of her, he said, that she survived everything she survived and she is still. He stopped. I told her I was proud to be her son. The line was quiet. Adrian, Mia said. Yes, that's everything, she said. That's the whole thing. Everything we've been doing for 3 months. That's what it was for. He did not answer for a moment. Then, I know. She let the silence hold. Then she said practically firmly, like a person who has let herself feel something and is now organizing herself back into forward motion. The foundation. I'll need an office that is not in your building. I'll have 3 options for you by Monday. Not the north side. I need to be accessible to the communities we serve. Understood. And Adrian. Yes. The gray coat, she said. The one outside my building. He can stop bringing sunflower seeds, or he can bring a bag. Not both options. Pick one. He made a sound. It was unmistakably a laugh. A short one. Quiet. The kind of laugh that has been waiting a long time to happen and is slightly surprised by itself when it does. I'll tell him to bring a bag, he said. Thank you, she said. She hung up. He sat in his office in the early Saturday morning quiet, and he looked at his hands, and he signed very carefully the sign for belonging, the one she had corrected him on, the one she had held his hand in the right position, for the one that took him 3 sessions to get right. He got it right. He sat with it for a while. Outside December, Chicago moved through its cold and ordinary morning. Somewhere across the city, Mia was probably already on her way to the community center canvas bag over one shoulder, walking at the pace of someone who has somewhere to be and is glad to be going there. Somewhere on the second floor of the brownstone, Elena was probably in the kitchen already planning the Sunday menu, signing to herself the way she had started doing again, talking to the room, filling it back up with her voice. And somewhere in the house on the north side, Rosa was making coffee, and the morning was ordinary and warm. And for the first time in a very long time, the silence in the house was not the silence of absence. It was the silence of a Sunday morning in a place where people lived, really lived, the kind of living that requires someone willing to stay. He picked up his phone. He started a message to Mia. He stopped. He put the phone down. He went to find his mother. Rosa found the letter on a Monday morning, not a dramatic letter. Not the kind that arrives in an envelope with serious implications. It was a handwritten note, 2 pages folded once left on the kitchen counter under the coffee maker, where Adrian would find it before anyone else was awake. Rosa found it because she was always up before Adrian, which was saying something, and because she had a habit of clearing the counter before she started the coffee, which was how she found it, and how she spent 45 seconds deciding whether to leave it or move it before deciding correctly that moving it would be wrong. She left it exactly where it was. She made the coffee. She went to the other end of the kitchen and did not look at the note again because she was a woman of considerable discretion, which was the primary reason she had lasted 22 years in this household. Adrian came down at 5:15. He saw the note before he saw the coffee. He stood at the counter and read it without sitting down, without touching the coffee, without moving at all, except for his eyes tracking across the page. He read both pages. He turned back to the first and read it again. Rosa kept her eyes on the sink. She heard him set the note down. She heard him pour his coffee. She heard him sit at the counter, which he almost never did. Adrian drank his morning coffee standing or walking, never sitting, because sitting implied he had time to sit. He sat. Rosa turned around. His face was composed. It was always composed. But there was something different in the set of it, something she had started to notice in the past few weeks, a quality of openness that had not been there before, like a window that has been painted shut for years and someone has finally worked the latch free. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," he said. He looked at the note. "She's moving the foundation office," he said. "She found a space on the west side, Pilsen. She wants to be closer to the deaf school there." "That's good," Rosa said carefully. "It's an hour from here," he said. Rosa said nothing. He picked up his coffee. He put it down. "She also," he said, "accepted an invitation to present at a National Deaf Education Conference in March, in Washington." "That's wonderful. She'll be gone for a week." Rosa looked at him. He was looking at the note. "Sir," Rosa said, with the gentle directness of a woman who has spent 22 years saying the things that needed to be said in this household and has gotten quite good at identifying the right moment. "If you have something to tell her, you should tell her." He looked up. Rosa had already turned back to the counter. He sat with his coffee and the 2-page note and the early morning quiet of a house that had learned over the past 4 months to be something other than silent. And he thought about what Rosa had said, and whether she was right, and whether he was the kind of man who did the thing that needed doing before it became the thing that should have been done. He picked up his phone. He put it down again. He picked up the note. He read the last paragraph a third time. It said, "I wanted to tell you in person, but I keep running out of time at Sunday lunches, and by the time Elena and Diane give me back my hands after signing for 2 hours, my brain doesn't work properly anymore. So I'm writing it down. The foundation is the best thing that has happened to my professional life. More than that, it is the first time I have felt like I am doing the thing I was always supposed to be doing. I think you know that. I think that is why you built it the way you built it. So thank you. And also, your signing at Sunday lunch last week was almost perfect." Elena noticed too. She didn't say anything because she didn't want you to stop and start thinking about it. But she noticed. He folded the note. He put it in his pocket. He finished his coffee. He went upstairs and knocked on Elena's door. She was awake. She was always awake early. One of the things she had told Mia was that silence made sleeping late feel wasteful because there was no sound to sleep through. And so the quiet of morning felt the same as the quiet of midnight, and her body had stopped distinguishing between them. She opened the door in her robe. She looked at her son. She signed. What happened? He handed her the note. She read it standing in her doorway. When she finished, she looked at him. She signed. She said, "My hands sign for 2 hours." He signed back. "That is the part you focused on." She signed. "It's the best part." Then she looked at him more carefully. "What are you going to do?" He signed. "I don't know." She looked at his hands. She looked at his face. She signed with the particular slow precision she used when she wanted to make absolutely certain he understood every word. "Adrian, you have spent your entire adult life knowing what to do. In every situation, in every room, you have never once not known what to do." He signed, "I know." She signed, "So you know." He looked at her. She signed, "You know exactly what to do. You are standing in my doorway at 5:30 in the morning because you want someone to tell you it is all right to do it." He was quiet. She signed, "It is all right." He stood in the hallway. He looked at the note in her hand. He said aloud because some things needed the weight of his actual voice. "She is building something. She is exactly where she is supposed to be. I don't want to." Elena held up one hand. She signed, "She is not fragile. Do not protect her from you." It landed like the truest thing anyone had said to him in a long time. He nodded. Once. Elena handed back the note. She went back inside her room. She paused at the door and signed over her shoulder without turning around the same way she used to sign goodnight when he was small, and she was on her way down the hall. "Go. Before you spend another month thinking about it." He did not go immediately. He was not impulsive. He had never been impulsive in his adult life, and he was not going to become impulsive now, simply because his mother had given him permission to do a thing he already knew he needed to do. He thought about it for 3 more days, which was his version of acting quickly. And on Thursday morning, he drove himself to Pilsen, not in the usual car, not with the usual 2 men. He drove himself in a car that was not registered to any of his holdings, and he parked on the street, and he walked to the building Mia had described in the note, a former community arts space that the foundation had taken over, which was in the process of being converted, and was currently a state of organized chaos that involved paint fumes and the sound of someone installing shelving at 8:30 in the morning. He walked in. A young man with paint on his forearms looked up and looked at Adrian, and looked at his paint-covered forearms, and then looked back at Adrian. "Can I help you?" he said with the tone of someone who suspected the answer was no. "Mia Carter," Adrian said. "She's—" The young man pointed upward, which was not particularly specific, but Adrian took it to mean the 2nd floor and went to find the stairs. He found her on the 2nd floor, standing in the middle of a room that had been stripped to its bones and was in the process of becoming something else. She was holding a paint chip card and looking at the wall with the concentrated expression of someone making a decision that had more layers than paint. She heard his footsteps. She turned around. She looked at him. She looked at the paint chip card in her hand. She looked back at him. "You drove yourself here," she said. "Yes. In Pilsen." "I know where Pilsen is." "In a car I didn't recognize." "No," he said. He paused. "I have cars that are not in the usual rotation." "Of course you do." She looked at the paint chip card again. Then she lowered it. "What are you doing here, Adrian?" He looked at the room, at the stripped walls and the bare floor and the half-installed shelving and the smell of potential that occupied spaces between what something was and what it was becoming. "I read your note," he said. "I know. Rosa texted me." He looked at her. "She texted you. She said you sat down to drink your coffee." Mia's expression was entirely neutral. She said that never happens. She thought I should know. He made a note to have a conversation with Rosa about professional boundaries, and then immediately knew that he would not, because Rosa was right about everything, and he was not going to punish her for it. I sat down, he said, because I was reading something that required sitting. 2 pages, she said. I wasn't sure. I started over 4 times. It was the right length. She looked at him carefully. Adrian, she said, why are you in Pilsen at 8:30 on a Thursday morning? He looked at her. He signed it. He did not say it. He signed it because it was the language they had built between them, the one that lived in his hands, now the one he had practiced in the dark of his study until it was real and not performed, and because saying things in the language you learned for someone is the truest form of saying them. He signed, because I should have said this before you wrote the note. Because I kept waiting for the right time, and the right time kept not arriving, and I decided to stop waiting. She watched his hands. She was very still. He signed. You changed my family, you changed my mother, and you changed me, and you built something in this city that is going to outlast all of us. And I have been watching you do all of it from the right distance, because I didn't want to make it about me. I didn't want to be another thing you had to manage or navigate or set boundaries against. He stopped. He signed, but I am here because I am done watching from the right distance. The room was very quiet. The shelving installation had stopped somewhere below them. Mia held the paint chip card in both hands, and she looked at him. You practiced that, she said. 3 days. All of it. The important parts. He paused. The last part I signed last night and got right once. I wasn't sure I would get it right again. She looked at his hands. You got it right, she said. He held her gaze. I know what you're building here, he said. I know it's yours. I'm not asking to be part of the foundation. I'm not asking to change anything about what you're doing or how you're doing it. I'm asking something different. What are you asking? He signed one word. It was the sign for stay, not a complicated sign. But he had worked on the angle and the intention of it until it felt like an invitation rather than a demand, because the difference between those two things lived in something smaller than the movement itself, in the quality of the hands when they made it in, whether the person signing was asking or telling. He was asking. She looked at the sign. She looked at his face. She said, I'm already here. I know, he said. I know what you mean, she said. The room was quiet again. I have conditions, she said. Something moved in his face. Of course you do, he said. The foundation stays mine. Board structure stays as is. You don't show up at the office unannounced. She paused. Except this once. Agreed. Diane stays. She is Elena's person, not a household employee. That doesn't change because of this. It wouldn't occur to me to change it. And she stopped. He waited. And Elena has to want this, she said. Not just accept it. Want it. She was there first. She is the reason any of this exists. I'm not going to become something that changes what she has. He was quiet. He signed. She told me to come before I spent another month thinking about it. Mia looked at his hands. She looked at him. She almost said something. Then she pressed her lips together and looked at the paint chip card in her hands. This one, she said. She held up the card. He looked at it. The warm white, she said. For the main room? I've been standing here for 20 minutes trying to decide. He looked at the card. He looked at the walls. He said yes. She nodded. She set the card down on the windowsill. She signed back to him one sign, easy and clear. The sign she had shown him on the very first Wednesday in his office when she had said, this is where most people go wrong, and shown him the sign for welcome. Welcome. He looked at her hands. He signed, thank you. She picked up her clipboard. I have a contractor coming at 9, she said. Stay or go, it's your choice. He stayed. He did not tell Elena that day. He did not need to. Elena found out the way Elena found out most things that happened in the lives of people she loved, not because she was told, but because she paid attention. She had been paying attention for 72 years, and she was very good at it. She had paid attention when her son started sitting down to drink his coffee. She had paid attention when the usual Thursday evening ended with him coming home later than usual. Not in the organizational way, the running late because something went wrong way, but in the quiet way of someone who has been somewhere they wanted to be and was not in a hurry to leave. She had paid attention when Sunday lunch arrived and Mia came in and set her canvas bag down, and there was something different in the way she looked at Adrian, or rather the way she stopped carefully not looking at him, which was its own kind of information. Elena said nothing for 2 Sundays. On the 3rd Sunday, she signed at Mia, while Adrian was in the kitchen, helping Rosa with the coffee, which he had started doing another small change that Rosa had noted and said nothing about. "Are you happy?" Mia looked at her. She signed, yes. Elena signed, with the foundation. Mia signed with everything. Elena nodded. She looked toward the kitchen. She signed. "He has been practicing a new sign all week. He thinks I don't notice him practicing in the hall. He practices in the hall because the acoustics are different, and he can check the shadow of his hands against the wall." She paused. "He is 48 years old, and he checks his hand shadows on the wall like a child learning the alphabet." Mia pressed her lips together. What sign she signed? Elena looked at her. "I haven't seen it yet," she signed. "But I know the shape of it. I know when someone is practicing something they are afraid to get wrong." Adrian came back with the coffee. He set it on the table. He looked at both of them. He signed what Elena signed nothing. He looked at Mia. Mia signed nothing. He looked between them. "You're doing that thing," he said. "What thing?" Mia said. "The thing where you have an entire conversation while I'm not in the room, and then I come back and you're both—" He stopped. "I can't describe it." Elena signed to Mia. "He's getting better at reading rooms." Mia signed back. "He always was. He's just reading different rooms now." He looked at them both. He signed with elaborate deliberateness, "I can see you." Then I understood both of those. Elena laughed. Mia laughed. And Adrian sat down at the Sunday table in the small family room with the chairs that held the shape of the people who used them. And he looked at the 2 women across from him, and he felt the thing he had not had words for in November and had since found the sign for the one he had been practicing in the hallway with his shadow against the wall. He had not said it yet. He would say it today. After lunch, Diane arrived. She arrived every Sunday now, not because it had been arranged, but because Elena had started texting her on Friday afternoons, and Diane had started showing up on Sunday afternoons with the ease of someone who has found a place where she belongs and has stopped waiting to be formally invited. She and Elena occupied the sitting room from 2 o'clock onward with a signing speed and specificity that left even Mia occasionally struggling to keep up, and which had over the course of December and into January become the most reliably animated 2 hours in the house. Adrian had met Diane 3 weeks after Mia had suggested her for the board. The meeting had been at Sunday lunch and had lasted 4 hours, and afterward Diane had signed to Elena. "He is better than I expected," and Elena had signed back. "He is better than he expected too," and neither of them had told Adrian though. Mia knew because Elena had told her, and because she had been watching the meeting from across the table and had come to the same conclusion independently. What Diane brought to the foundation board was exactly what Mia had predicted. A fluency in the landscape, a directness that matched Mia's own, and an absolute unwillingness to let anything slide that should not be slid. The first board meeting had lasted 3 hours, and Diane had revised the interpreter training curriculum twice and proposed a funding model that the financial advisor had called with some surprise genuinely sophisticated. She was, as Elena had signed to Rosa, rude and funny, and exactly right. This Sunday she came in with the cold still on her coat and signed at Elena immediately I found the book. Elena's face did what it did when she was pleased, the particular brightness of it. The way 50 years of contained emotion could still produce something that lit a room. The one from 1987 she signed. First edition. Your husband's name is in the front. Elena went still. He signed his name in it. Diane signed more gently. At a conference. The author signed it to him. Elena pressed both hands flat against her chest over her heart, the way people press against a feeling that arrives too fast. Mia, who had been watching from the doorway, did not translate. Some things did not need translation. Adrian was beside his mother in 3 steps. He touched her shoulder. She looked up at him. He signed, good. She signed, very good. Then he would have liked today. This house. These people. He looked at the room. At Diane, pulling off her coat and handing it to Rosa with the familiarity of someone who has stopped being a guest. At Mia in the doorway with her canvas bag and her warm winter coat, and the expression she wore when she thought no one was watching, which was the most unguarded one, the one that did not perform or protect. At the coffee cups already on the table and the light in the room and the sound of Diane signing something to Rosa in passing that made Rosa do the thing she almost never did and actually laugh. He signed to Elena. I think he would have. Elena held his hand for a moment. Then she released it and signed, "Go sit with her. You have been standing on the other side of the room for 20 minutes. He looked at his mother. She looked back with the expression she had been perfecting for 38 years, the one that said she had raised this man, and she knew exactly what he was doing, and he was not fooling anyone. He went and sat with Mia. They sat by the window, not dramatically, not facing each other in the meaningful way of people in the climax of a thing. Just side by side the way people sit when they have been in each other's company long enough that the geography of it is easy. Diane found his book, Mia said quietly. I know, he said. I heard. She has been looking for 3 weeks. She found it at an estate sale in Evanston. Mia looked at Elena across the room. She didn't tell Elena she was looking. Why not? Because she wanted to be sure she could actually find it before she said anything. Mia paused. She didn't want to make a promise she couldn't keep. He looked at Diane. He looked at the fact of Diane in his house in his family's Sunday holding a book that belonged to a man he had loved and missed for 12 years. She's good, he said. She's extraordinary, Mia said. She's the best thing that happened to the board, and the second best thing that happened to Elena. What's the first? She looked at him. You learning to sign, she said. He was quiet. He looked at his hands. He had been building toward this all day, and he had told himself he would say it when the moment was right, and he had been waiting for the right moment since Thursday in Pilsen, and it had not arrived in any form that felt significantly different from any other moment, which was when he understood that the right moment was not going to arrive, that you had to make it. He signed. He signed the word he had been practicing in the hallway. He signed it facing her clearly with the right angle and the right intention and the particular quality of hands that Mia had told him on the very first Wednesday made the difference between signing something and meaning it. The sign was love. Not the casual form, not the broad gesture. The specific sign hand pressed to chest moved outward, open given. He signed, I love you. She looked at his hands. She was very still. He signed, I practiced it for a week. I practiced it the way you told me to practice everything until it was in my hands and not my head. Until I stopped thinking about the sign and started thinking about what I meant. She did not say anything. He signed. You don't have to stop, she said. He stopped. She looked at his hands. She looked at his face. She raised her hands. She signed back. She signed it the way she signed everything naturally fluently, with the ease of someone for whom this language was as native as breathing. She signed it without hesitation, and without performance, and without any of the careful layering that people put over the things they are afraid to say. She signed, I know. I have known for a while. I was waiting for you to say it in the right language. He looked at her hands. He looked at her. What's the right language? He said. She signed, the one you had to learn, the one that cost you something. He was quiet. He thought about the videos at 3 in the morning, about the hallway and the shadow of his hands on the wall. About the ASL dictionary with the bookmark on page 347. About 43 signs and 39 right answers, and the 4 he had missed all in the category of connection until she held his hands in the right position. "It cost me something," he confirmed. "I know," she said. She reached out and took his right hand the way she had taken it on the first Wednesday to correct his angle. But not to correct his angle this time, just to hold it. He looked at their hands. He turned his hand over and held hers back. Across the room, Elena looked up. She saw. She did not make a sound. She did not gesture to Diane. She simply looked at her son and the young woman beside him, and she felt the specific quality of the thing that happens when something you have been hoping for finally arrives. Not the explosive joy of a surprise, but the deep, quiet settling of a thing coming into its right place. She looked at Diane. Diane had also seen. Diane signed in the dry, efficient shorthand she and Elena had developed over 3 months of Sunday afternoons. Finally. Elena signed back. He needed the right language. Diane signed. How long did it take him? Elena signed 4 months, 6 weeks longer than it should have. Diane signed men. Elena signed with enormous dignity. He is better than average. Diane considered this. She signed high bar. Elena looked at her son. She signed to Diane quietly. The highest bar I know. February came. The foundation opened formally on a Tuesday, not with a ceremony because Mia had refused a ceremony on the grounds that the work was not the kind of work that needed a ribbon and a photographer, and that the people the foundation served would find a ceremony alienating, and that she had enough to do without planning an event. The formal opening consisted of Mia arriving at the Pilsen office at 8 in the morning, unlocking the door with a key that had her name on the tag, and starting work. Adrian sent flowers. She called him. "I told you no ceremony," she said. "It's not a ceremony," he said. "It's flowers. There are 4 arrangements. 1 for the reception desk, 1 for the conference room, 1 for your office." A pause. "1 from Elena. She picked it herself." Mia stood in her new office and looked at the arrangement on her desk. Winter flowers, white and deep gold in a simple vase. There was a card. She opened it. Elena had signed the card. Not written, signed. She had cut the image from a photograph, the photo from the children's mural at the community center, the pair of hands signing family, and she had written beneath it in her careful handwriting, "You gave my son his hands back. Now use yours." Mia sat down in her office chair for the first time. She sat there for 2 minutes. She did not cry. She straightened up. She put the card in the top drawer of her desk. She started work. The Thursday evenings at Bellissimo continued. Mia had said she was keeping the shifts, and she had meant it. And for the first month after the foundation opened, she sometimes arrived at the restaurant, still carrying the particular energy of a day spent building something. The focused, slightly disheveled quality of real work, which was different from the careful presentation she had maintained in the early days of working there. Dario noticed. He said nothing. He had learned over the past 4 months which observations to make and which to keep to himself. Adrian still came every Thursday. Elena still came most Thursdays. Diane came twice a month, which had not been planned, it had simply become true. The VIP room in the east wing of Bellissimo restaurant had a quality on Thursday evenings that the other rooms did not, a warmth generated not by the decor. The decor was the same as it had always been, but by what happened in it. The particular sound of a table where people were actually talking, where the conversations went long and ran into each other and occasionally broke into laughter that was not performed for anyone's benefit. On a Thursday in late February, Mia arrived at the table to find Elena already deep in conversation with Diane, their hands moving at the speed they always reached after the first 10 minutes, the speed that meant they had stopped thinking about the conversation and were just having it, and Adrian sitting across from them with the expression he had been wearing more often lately. She had started calling it his learning expression. Not that he was learning something specifically, More that he was inhabiting the world differently than he used to, taking things in instead of managing them, watching instead of anticipating. He looked up when she sat down. He signed, "Long day." She signed, "Good day." Long. He signed, "The interpreter training cohort." She signed, "First session." 7 students. One of them cried. He signed, "Good cry" or "Bad cry." She signed, "Good." She said she had been trying to get training for 3 years and nobody had offered it at a price she could afford. He held her gaze. He signed, "That is why." She looked at his hands. "That is why" was not a complete sentence, but she understood it completely. She understood it the way she understood most of what he signed now, not just the words, but what lived behind the words, the specific quality of the man behind them. She signed, "Yes." Across the table, Elena had stopped signing. Mia felt it before she saw it, the change in the room's energy that comes when someone shifts their attention. She looked at Elena. Elena was watching them. Not the way people watch when they are waiting for something. The way people watch when they are seeing something they already knew was coming and are glad it arrived. She signed to both of them. She signed it slowly so that Adrian would catch every word because she wanted him to catch every word. She signed, "I used to sit at this table and move my hands in the air and nobody saw. Then a young woman walked across the room and saw me. And then my son walked all the way across something much larger than a room." She paused. She looked at Mia. She signed, "You brought sound back into my world." Mia shook her head. She signed, "No. Your son learned how to listen." Adrian looked at his mother. He looked at Mia. He looked at his hands, the large scarred hands that had spent 38 years in every language except the right one that had learned late and imperfectly and with enormous effort, and that now held in their movement the specific weight of everything they had been taught to carry. He signed to both of them. He signed, "I have something." They waited. He reached into his jacket pocket. He took out 2 envelopes. He set one in front of Elena and one in front of Mia. They opened them. Elena's was a letter handwritten 2 pages. He had written it in English and had it translated into ASL gloss, the written notation of sign language, so she could read it in her primary language. It began, "There are things I should have said in words before I could say them in signs. Here are some of them." Mia's envelope contained a single page. At the top it said, "The Valenti Family Foundation amended founding documents." Her name was on the founding document, not as director of programming, not as board chair, as co-founder. She looked at it. She looked at him. "Adrian," she said. "Read the amendment," he said. She read it. The amendment had been made by the full board, not by him. It was dated 2 weeks ago. The accompanying letter, signed by all 4 board members, including Diane, said, "This foundation exists because of your vision, your knowledge, and your work. The founding documents should reflect that. We voted unanimously." She looked at Diane. Diane signed with great composure. "Don't look at me like that. It was the right thing." Mia looked at the document. She looked at Adrian. "You didn't tell them to do this," she said. "No," he said. "Diane proposed it." "Diane proposed it. The board agreed in under 10 minutes. He held her eyes. "I abstained from the vote. It wasn't mine to cast." She looked at the paper. She looked at her name. She had spent her adult life moving quietly, trying not to take up too much space, waiting to see if the cost was going to arrive before she let herself have anything fully. She had turned down assistance at 18 because she didn't know how to receive it. She had taken 2 years to learn that needing help was not the same as failing at something. She had learned it. She had learned it the hard way, as most true things are learned. She looked at the co-founder's name on the document. She looked at it until it stopped being surprising and started being true. She folded the paper carefully. She put it in her bag. She looked at Adrian. She signed, "Thank you." He signed back, "It was always yours." Elena reached across the table and put her hand on top of Mia's. Mia looked at Elena's hand. She covered it with her own. She looked at the room. the room she had walked into 6 months ago as a waitress who had not been warned, who had seen a woman with her hands moving in the air and no one answering. Who had crossed the room, not because she was brave, but because she could not do otherwise, because she had grown up in the presence of silence, and she knew what it cost, and she would not leave it unanswered when she had the language to answer it. She looked at the man across the table, who had looked through people for 11 years, and now looked at them. Who had learned a language not in 6 months the way his father had, but in 4. Because the reason was the same. Because there is no such thing as easy when the stakes are this high, only worth it. And the two words mean the same thing when you are doing it for the right person. She looked at Elena, whose hands were still over hers, whose face held 72 years of love and loss, and the particular wholeness of a woman who has come back to herself. She looked at Diane across the table, who was pretending to read the menu she knew by heart, giving them the moment, because Diane understood exactly what moments required and what they did not. She looked at the VIP room of Bellissimo restaurant on a Thursday evening in February, at the table where a woman had once made herself small, so that nobody would have to notice she was hurting, and she thought about how the world changes. Not in the ways you expect, not in the dramatic restructuring of power, or the defeat of enemies, or the resolution of every problem that seemed permanent. It changes in the small crossings, in the decision to walk toward instead of past, in the patience of someone willing to learn the right language even when it is hard and late and imperfect. It changes one conversation at a time, one hand at a time. Adrian reached across the table and signed to Elena, clearly and completely, with none of the hesitation of a man still learning, and all the intention of a man who has already learned the most important thing. He signed, "I see you. I have always loved you. I am sorry it took me so long to say it in a language you could hear." Elena's eyes closed, for just a moment. Then she opened them, and she looked at her son who had grown up and hardened, and come back to her through the hands of a young woman who walked across a room and saw what no one else had bothered to see, and she signed back with the steady, certain hands of someone who has been waiting a very long time for this exact sentence and knows exactly what to say in return. She signed, "You're here now. That is the whole answer." And in the east wing of Bellissimo restaurant, on a cold February Thursday in Chicago, the most feared man in the city held his mother's answer in his hands, and beside him sat the woman who had taught him that love is not a wall you build or a resource you manage or a threat you neutralize. It is a language you learn imperfectly and on purpose for the person who needs to hear it. And what had begun with a woman moving her hands in the air in an empty room had become this: a table full of people who saw each other completely, who spoke each other's language, who had chosen again and again to cross the distance between them until there was no distance left. The man who feared nothing had learned to fear losing this. The woman who asked for nothing had learned to receive what she deserved. And the silence that had once lived in this family like a locked room was unlocked now and filled, and it would never be empty again.